Coming to you live from the internet, Silverline.
I don't think that's exactly how you did it the last time. That was great.
What was that?
It's a WWE style ringside announcement.
That's right.
Oh.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate that. So, hello, everyone, and welcome to Silverline Live. This is episode 9. And tonight we're going to be talking about what got us into comics. We're all into them. We're all making them. We're all doing them. And so we're going to be talking about what got us into comics. And I'm going to try to remember tonight. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, follow, do all that. We still need the follows on YouTube. We still need you to go like the Silverline Comics page on Facebook. So make sure you do all that, the liking, the sharing, and all that kind of stuff. And during the course of the stream, make sure you ask us some questions too. We've got my son Brett, who's going to be monitoring all the chat tonight. So when he sees you ask us a question, he'll be able to ask us, and we will give you. We'll do our best to give you answers. So ask us some hard stuff, especially everybody else. Ask everybody else really hard stuff. So I'm just going to do like we normally do. I'm going to go on through the murderer's row and have everyone introduce themselves. And I'll start with me. I am Roland Mann. I wrangle the group that is here at Silverline. I'm also the writer of Cat and Mouse. And next on my murderer's row here, I see Kurtis. Who are you, Kurtis?
Hello, I am Kurtis Fujita. I have experience in comic books and animation and video games as an illustrator, and I am the creative director at Silverline. So I will hand it over to Barb.
I'm next there. Okay. My name is Barb Kaalberg, and I have been an inker for 30 plus years. I'm currently working as an inker for Cat and Mouse, inker and creator and co-writer for Divinity, colorist for Sirens, and I am the CFO of Silverline.
Nice. Who you handing it off to, Barb?
Thomas.
What? Does it start already? Are we live? Oh, yeah. My name is Thomas Florimonte. I am primarily known as a inker with all the stuff that I've done, but I write in color and pencil, and I'm actually co-owner of a company called Kablam that we're printing company, but I ink for Silverline a book called Trumps.
Excellent. So, and we should be really quick to say that Kablam has done the printing and fulfillment for the last 3 Silverline Kickstarters.
Oh yeah.
They did the printing for the first one, for the Cat and Mouse one, but we foolishly did our own fulfillment. And now we have just turned it over all to
Yep, we do the fulfillment, the Kickstarter, Patreon, any Indiegogo we can do. We can ship it all.
Yeah,
ship it, print it, ship it.
And the thing I quickly realized, because the first time, I had to come up with all the boxes and the packaging and stuff like that. And then of course at Kablam, they're like, yeah, we got all that.
We have that stuff.
Big stacks of them here, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. That's a whole lot easier. So yeah, and I unfortunately I'm not flying my Kablam colors this week. I'm sorry. So.
Oh well. What? Go change real quick.
Yeah. All right, Tommy, who you handing it off to?
I'm giving it to Miss Becca. Wake up.
Okay. Hi, I'm Becca. I am a colorist for Friar Rush. Also, I'm coloring. Let's see if I can get this right.
Let's go.
No, here we go.
Listen.
Marauder.
Oh wait, shh. Say it
Marauder?
again. Yeah.
I'm still learning English, and I'm new to Silverline, new to the business, and really excited.
You also are an inker now too.
Oh yes, I'm an inker now.
That's right. Yeah.
Our sponsor tonight is Rosetta Stone.
Oh boy.
Yeah. We can translate for you.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, very cool. Yeah. All right, Becca, who you handing it off to?
I will head it off to Brent.
I'm Brent Larson. I am the creator of Kalis. I am the writer of Kalis. I'm the writer of all the ancillary material for Kayla's. I did a letter to the fans in Kayla's. I'm pretty useless.
But you
I
also
love
make
it.
films.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
you also
I
make
make
films.
films. In fact, I just made a film that's going to drop in the next few days called Human in Isolation. I'll post it on my Facebook page. It stars me and my dogs, but I actually had some friends shoot it professionally because that's kind of what we do, and we were looking for ways to make films while in isolation.
Wow.
Weirdly enough, there was no one to be in it except this guy. So yeah, it's kind of fun. I'll let you guys know when it drops.
All right. And Brent, who are you going to hand it off to?
To either my right or my left. Okay.
pick somebody.
Kurtis, you want to go, or Roland? How about you?
Kurtis has already gone. Roland has already gone. You got to
How
pick
about-
someone who hasn't gone.
Okay. How about Tim TK?
Hi, everyone. I am Tim TK. I am the associate editor at Silverline and Roland's second brain. So I just download all the extras he doesn't want to deal with. And that includes running our website scheduling and the craft blog series, which is my baby. I'm also editing 2 books, which are as of yet unannounced, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, and not this week, but man, do we have an interesting story to talk about on one of them. Really interesting things have happened over the last couple of days, and that's not the story for today. It might be the story for next week. So quite an would you agree,
suspense.
wouldn't you agree, Sid? This is a very interesting story that we have to tell about one of the projects. So
I think it is. It is.
We'll give you a hint as to what project. It's Friar Rush that has an interesting story behind it, but we're going to put that story off until next week. So
I'm sure it would have been awesome.
And it will be.
Yes, it will be awesome.
Something to tune in for next week.
Well, we lost Alex. So Tim, who are you going to hand it off to?
I will pass it off to John since Alex has died.
Hey, all right, I'm not last. Finally, it's starting to feel like gym class all over again. Elementary school, junior high, high school. Yeah, you're stuck with the fat kid. My name's John Tick. I am an editor at Silverline. I'm also the writer, creator, director, letterer, pre-press guy for Sniper and Rook, and a couple other upcoming titles that will be discussed later on.
Excellent. And I've known John for quite a few, not as long as I've known Sid, but I've known John for quite a few years.
Over 20.
Yep. Or not as long as I've known Tommy either. So, man, I've just known a couple of you guys for a long time. All right, John, who are you handing it off to? There's really only one person you can hand it off to now.
I think Sidney is up next.
I'm last. Okay, great. Last guy
Alex
picked.
looks like he's back now.
Alex is back.
Last guy picked for the softball team. Oilers for cat and mouse. That's what I'm seeing now.
What?
I am Sidney Williams, and I am a writer for Silverline and have been for a long time, as we're alluding to here. And my current projects that we're talking about are Friar Rush and Bloodline, and those are coming soon and are really exciting.
Excellent. And of course, then Sid, last but not least, I don't know if you can see him on your screen yet. Alex is here.
Oh, great. Okay, now I see. Yeah.
Hello. Sorry about all the technical difficulties there. Alex Gallimore. I'm the penciler for Ken Mouse 3, and I'm the penciling a panel, or a couple panels.
Yeah, I love your
Cool.
spoiler cover there.
What's that covering up?
You'll have to buy the book.
That's
Oh,
right.
okay.
You know what Tommy told me one time? So Tommy,
no.
yeah,
What?
Tommy told me one time. I'm like, dude, all these other people have to wait until it gets shipped out. He goes, oh, I just read it when I print it.
Yep. That's right. I get to see a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so before we actually get in too far to our topic today, Barb, I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Okay.
Brett, while she's talking, can you run the Kickstarter pages? We have a Kickstarter run, and we launched it yesterday. And I apologize, I don't have it up on my screen to give you an update of where we are. Pulling it up.
1789, I think.
I hear it's doing really good.
Yep, we have 45 backers, and we're at 1789. So yeah, we're off to a nice start. We just need to keep rolling. So if you're out there listening to us, please go take a check. Brett's going to put. Oh, wait a minute! I forgot to introduce Brett. So behind the scenes, running all the tech stuff for us is my son Brett, who is quick to make sure you get to see all the images that you need to see, including the Kickstarter page. So so Brett, as Barb talks, would you just kind of scroll through the page so they can see all the cool images? All right, Barb, tell us about Divinity. Why do we need to back this Kickstarter? I mean, I know, but tell everybody who's listening.
Wonderful writing and wonderful art. That's a good start anyway.
That is a great start.
Divinity is a story of an 11-year-old girl. She loses her parents, and it's under mysterious circumstances. So her 24-year-old brother, they're 13 years apart. Her 24-year-old brother, Zach, is given a hardship discharge from the Marines, which he's not happy about because that was going to be his career. And he has to come home and take guardianship of his little sister. He's also suspicious about the deaths of his parents, his dad and his stepmom. And he begins to investigate it. And while he's investigating it, he discovers that Divinity, his little sister, has the ability to heal with a touch. Now, this isn't a superhero with supervillain stories. She's the only one with powers in this story. And I didn't want superheroes or supervillains because I figure there's enough evil in the world that we don't actually need to make up villains. And once he finds out that she's got this ability, he begins to understand why things are happening. And before he can do anything about it, however, things happen that put them on the run, and they find themselves, their lives completely turned upside down as they are running from an evil cabal. And future stories will expand on the whole story of why you would consider the ability to heal to be actually more of a curse than a blessing. And most people would think it would be the best thing in the entire world to be able to heal. I mean, we've all got people in our family that we would like to heal, but would it really be a blessing if it got out that you could heal? Can you imagine even trying to step out your front door? You wouldn't be able to step out your front door. You would be mobbed every single day with people begging you to be able to heal. So they go on the run, and eventually it'll be a road story, you know, like The Prisoner, you know, different story every week, or Supernatural, where they're on the road, a different case every week. But in this case, they'll be running across people like storylines like Big Pharma and governments and religious fanatics. Yeah, religious fanatics who either hate her or love her, or you know,
get Monsanto in there somehow.
Black sites that want to dissect her brain and things like that. But overarching, it's this evil cabal who want to get their hands on her for their own nefarious purposes.
So I want to be quick to say that even though Barb's philosophy is no spandex, that's not a Silverline philosophy. And that's just Barb's philosophy for Divinity, right?
Right. That's just Divinity. I mean, I ink cat and mouse, and there's spandex in there.
That's right. So
opinions expressed are not those of Silverline or its subsidiaries. All right.
I mean, right. I inked spandex for 30 years, so it's not like I'm opposed to it.
So Barb, with your permission, I am going to actually read a couple of quotes that you got for the Divinity story. Is that all right with you?
Go for it. I love it.
All right. So everyone, even though the theaters kind of shut down before it happened, everyone was excited about the film Bloodshot. Everybody remembers that, right? We haven't had a chance to see it because we didn't pay for it on the
Vin
streaming
Diesel.
thing. Vin Diesel, right? Which is actually based off of a Valiant comic, right? So Kevin Van Hook is the creator. Kevin Van Hook is also, he wrote some comics in the maybe the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. But this is what Kevin Van Hook had to say about Divinity #1. He said, Divinity #1 manages to bring a fresh take to this story of a young girl with mysterious healing powers. Alex Arabiya's pencils, combined with veteran inker Barb Kaalberg, keeps the tale moving and makes you care for the characters as you're along for the ride. Good stuff. So hey, we got a nice good stuff from Kevin Van Hook. The other one here, for longtime comic book fans, should recognize the name of Maggie Thompson. Maggie and Don Thompson were very instrumental for many years in the comic book industry. And they ran a publication. They did lots of other things, but they ran a publication called the Comic Buyer's Guide. And of course, the Comic Buyer's Guide, frequently just called CBG, was where we got all of our news. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have, YouTube and all that kind of stuff. We didn't have that. So many of us looked forward to that weekly delivery of the Comic Buyer's Guide. And of course, it would have the news of the industry, but it would also have the letters and the really famous Peter David and Eric Larson spat went on back and forth in the Comic Buyer's Guide, which was kind of fun to watch. But Maggie took the time to read Divinity #1, and this is what Maggie had to say about it. Maggie said, "It's one of the moments that tells the reader a comic book has succeeded. It's the moment when the reader says, 'Hey, that's all I get right now? What happens next?' That reaction means the story works. It means the elements have gone together to make a great mix. It means the reader cares. And that's the reaction readers will have when they get to the last panel of Divinity 1. It's the issue that introduces the Marine who's had to return to the States to take care of his half-sister. And it introduces the girl who has a talent neither of them can explain. Now the question is, how long will readers have to wait until #2? Because they're going to care." So Kevin and Maggie tell you to care and good stuff. So if you're listening right now and you have not pledged to the Silverline double feature, which features Divinity and Twilight Grim, what are you waiting on? Get over there and check it out. The other book, and I'll speak a little bit for them since they're not here, is Twilight Grim. We're doing a double feature, which, for those of you, it's a flip book that we're doing, that you can read it on one side and then you can flip it over and you can read it on the other side. I don't know if companies do a whole lot of that anymore. I know they used to do some of that, but that's what we're going to do.
Rob's not here.
Rob's not here. Neither's RA.
Oh, okay.
No. So Twilight Grim, this is what RA has to say about Twilight Grim. 20 years ago, the city of Hallowed Heights was nearly destroyed as a result of warfare between humans and vampires. In its aftermath, the two factions forged a most unusual peace plan. A high and heavily guarded wall now splits the two sides of the city. On one side of the wall reside the middle and upper classes of humans. It is clean, beautiful, and safe. On the other side of the wall, where a teenage petty thief named Susie Q has just been exiled, lies the deepest and most horrible ghetto imaginable. Here, amidst squalor and vice, dwell the poor, the homeless, the forgotten, and the vampires, led by the family of Gregor Radovic. As long as the vampires stay on their side of the wall, the humans on the other side are willing to pretend they don't exist and let them rule over the so-called blood zone as they see fit. This includes turning a blind eye to the vampires' feast upon the zone's human inhabitants. Amidst rumors that the long-held truce may be unraveling, there is no human law in the blood zone, save for that dispensed by a mysterious and violent young man who has appointed himself its sole guardian for the depredations of the vampire. His name is Twilight Grim. And that's that one. So here's the other thing that we have to say. Both of these books, if you're still on the fence, both of these books are done. As you know, it's if you've been following Silverline at all, it's our policy to make sure the books are done before we kickstart. We have seen fans and herd fans that say, I pledged to this book 3 years ago and I'm still waiting on it. I am frustrated. I am angry. Or even I pledged to this book last year and they were supposed to deliver it in December and it is now May and I'm still waiting. And I hear people on streams going, you know, we understand that it's late. Like, no, fans don't understand that it's fans want their books. They pledged their money. They've already given the money, right? They don't want to give you $40 or $50 and then wait 2 years to get something. They just don't. So we heard that and we made sure that what we do is we don't kickstart them until they're ready. In fact, I'll tell you a secret. We've already got our next Kickstarter scheduled, in-house scheduling, right? It's not actually on Kickstarter yet. And both of those books, well, one book likes about 3 pages to be colored. It'll be done probably within the week. We could theoretically kickstart them next week. So they're already done as well. And we should have the books after that, you know, in good shape too. So yeah. So Barb, talk about some of so one of the things we have with Divinity here and Twilight Grim, the Silverline double feature, we've got an excess original art. I mean, it's just a wealth of nice. Can you walk us through? I'm not sure Brett will be able to pick some of them out. Brett, what you might want to do is scroll down and look on the left-hand side for the names. As she mentions them, all the names you'll see them on the little blue. It'll say original art level with a name. And so you might scroll down to find that. So Barb, can you tell us about some, oh, look at there. Alex is actually showing one of the original pieces. I'm sorry, Barb, I'm jumping in on you here.
Go ahead.
Alex is showing the original piece of art for the Twilight Grim Kickstarter cover, which Alex penciled, inked, and he also digitally colored. So this is one of the rewards. I think it is still available. Let me look real quick here to see if it is. My mouse is still messing up. Original art. It is still available. So it is the original art TGKS cover, stands for Twilight Grim Kickstarter cover. This is a chance for you to get a beautiful looking cover. This is the kind of thing that's you're frameable, hanging this thing on your wall. So thank you very much, Alex. It's a gorgeous piece.
Roland, Alex should say something. I think that doesn't bring it to the full screen, or maybe it's full screen now.
Okay.
For him,
Okay. I think that's something that Brett has to do. So see, you got to keep in mind we see something a little bit different than the stream.
Yeah. I'm looking at it online too.
Oh, well, also my online is like 3 minutes behind what we are.
Yeah, it's a little behind too.
So don't try to react to what you're seeing online because you're going to be like 3 minutes late.
Behind.
Yeah, somebody's going to say,
I just wanted to make sure that got full screen at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it looks really cool.
It does.
What's next in line?
All right, so yeah, you know what? I'll just go down the line. I'll go down the line with you, Brett. So it'll be easier as you follow all the colored pages. Go back to the Kickstarter page, and as you scroll down, you're going to see a bunch of colored pages, and then you'll see all the creators, and then you'll see little blue cards. I want you to come down to past the yellow card, and then go down to the one that says Rob Davis Convention Sketch 75. I think we still have some of those. Barb, I'm sorry, I'll jump in where there's the Twilight Grim stuff here.
No, that's no problem.
So there are 2 of these left. All right. So what we started with our very first Kickstarter, and we're going to try to do this as much as we can, and certainly now more since we are in the middle of quarantine, or maybe in the late stages of quarantine, whatever. Many of us are still quarantined. It's often really tough to get out and meet the artists that you want to see. Sometimes the artists just don't travel. Sometimes they don't travel distances. Sometimes they may not come to your city. Sometimes you may not travel. You may be stuck in the middle of Idaho. Not that there's anything wrong with Idaho, but you might be in the middle of Idaho and there just are no major conventions there that bring people there. This is an opportunity for you to get a convention sketch from the creators who are associated with Silverline. So this is what we're trying to do every time. And we had Alex did some for the cat and mouse one. Dean did some for the first cat and mouse. Kickstarter, and this is what Rob Davis is doing here. So he's already got 2 of them have been chosen. So there's 2 more left. He'll do anything that you want him to do. I mean, within reason, obviously, but he'll do you a convention sketch of one character. You can have him draw your own character or your favorite Marvel, DC. We would encourage you to have him draw independent characters, but you know, it's your choice. So the next one up then is the original art page for page 2 from Divinity #1.
Alex Arabiya. His work is just stunningly gorgeous. When I was out looking for pencilers for Divinity, I was going through page after page on DeviantArt trying to find, you know, an artist who would be willing to work on spec. And I'd been looking for days, and all of a sudden I got this private message on Facebook, and it was an artist from Mexico, and he said, "Hi, my name is Alex Arabiya. I have been a fan of yours for a long time, and one of my greatest dreams is to work with you someday." And that intrigued me, so I flipped over to his Facebook page, and I'm looking at it, and I'm going, "Holy cow, this stuff is gorgeous, gorgeous." So I answered him back. I said, "How about right now?" And it just all came together. His stuff is beautiful. Actually, he's doing some work for Kevin Van Hook right now too. So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So so Tim, hearing her talk about going to DeviantArt, does that ring any bells from my class at all?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. One of the. Go ahead, Tim.
It's a real rabbit hole.
It is.
Yeah.
Maybe not the best rabbit hole to be in at times.
No, but one of the things that I do in my class is, you know, because it's a writing program, and one of the things I do in my class is try to offer strategies to writers on how to find artists. You know, as we have pointed out before we were live today, as creative types, we very much are okay with living in the caves, right? And so it makes it sometimes difficult to get out and meet people. And so if you're a writer who needs to work with some artists, then it's even tougher for you. So what I've tried to do in the class is say, all right, here are some, assuming that you don't know anyone, here are some good places to go and find artists. And of course, DeviantArt is usually the last. I give them 4 sites, and DeviantArt is usually the last one because of the reasons that Tim mentions. But I talk about places like Pencil Jack, Comic Book Resources, Digital Webbing. Comic Book Resources and Digital Webbing both have like community pages where artists can post their art. Pencil Jack, it doesn't have the traffic that it used to have. Several years ago, it was really, really good. There was a lot of activity there, and it's a workshop. So they would post their artwork, and then all the other pencilers would come in and say, "Hey, your angle's wrong here. Maybe you're foreshortening here." You know, they would talk about that. And it was really interesting to watch. You know, not being an artist, to see them kind of workshop the pieces. But you could find a lot of artists there who are, you know, who really should be doing some comics, and you know, talking to Alex and some of the other cubies. You know, one of my things is always make comics. Don't wait for Marvel or DC to call you, right? Because if you do that, then you might be waiting a long time. Make some comics. You know, don't worry about going out and working on, you know, the top X-Men book right immediately. Make some comics, and you'll eventually get there. So
you'd be surprised who's on DeviantArt though. Bill Reinhold has got his portfolio on DeviantArt, and so do I.
Jerome Moore's. I didn't know. I have to link up with you then. Jerome Moore has his stuff on there. Yeah, a lot of. Yeah, I'm not saying again.
That's where
DeviantArt's on my list. It's just that
that's where we hold our online portfolio.
Right.
Yeah. It's the browse page gets a little weird, but I've recently come to really appreciate Twitter and the idea that every hashtag is a portfolio. So the important thing is if you find an artist who can effectively manage your hashtags so you can find them, has a link to a good DeviantArt portfolio, that works out because you know they're already on social media and they know how to push something over social media, which you need to do for marketing your indie comic.
The hard thing to do on DeviantArt is look for a new artist who has sequential art.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always the splash page,
Oh my goodness.
but finding
And,
the one that's sequential art is
Yeah.
I think we need to do like a dating game show where we find, match artists with projects. And
Well, this is one of the reasons that I'm personally I'm so fond of the cubies, because when and it's sometimes it's a question of style. Sometimes you can look at an artist and say, you know what, I just don't like that style. Nothing the artist can really do about that. That's their style. But one of the things I like about the cubies is when they exit school, they've got the basis, they've got the understanding to tell stories sequentially, right? Now, whether they're able to do it, because as you very well know, some of them exit and then just say, I'm never going to draw a sequential page in my life, I'm going to go be a famous mural painter. Yeah, okay, whatever, you do you, but that they have the ability to do that because they've been taught how to tell stories sequentially on the page.
Oh, Chris Lanning just popped a message in. I can repeat it. He said a lot of artists are moving to ArtStation.
Yeah, I got that one too.
Yeah.
Let's move down the page onto Kickstarter.
Yep. So the next page there, I see original art, page 6, Brett, and this is page 6, which is a full page splash from Rob Davis. Rob Davis on Twilight Grim. Rob actually penciled and inked the entirety of Twilight Grim. It is, of course. We should also mention the people who are working on the projects but who aren't here. So with Rob Davis, Mickey Clausen colored Twilight Grim, and Mike W. Belcher lettered it. And for Divinity, Divinity was colored by Steve Matson. The cool thing is Steve did all the colors old school style. He hand colored all of that stuff. Hand colored it, scanned it in, and I think his daughter helped him.
Sasha.
I'm not really. I got to figure out exactly kind of what she did with that, but I know that she helped him digitally scan it into Photoshop, maybe tweaked it a little bit.
Yeah, tweaked it.
And then of course Mike W. Belcher also lettered Divinity. So yeah, we got a pretty cool. Pretty cool teams on there. We're lucky to have the teams. So so that page 6 is a splash page. I guess I should make sure which one of these are still available. Page 2, page 10. So that one may be gone. So page 10 from Divinity is another Alex and Barb page. Page 10. Then we have from Twilight Grim. And we also have page 10 from Divinity. Oh, both page 10s. So we got some pages. Let's skip through those. Those teams are going to be the same there. We've got the cover that we've already mentioned. And then we have the cat and mouse team up, which I believe is also already, yes, it's gone.
It's gone.
So the next one then is Brett, scroll down to the 200 original art, Johnson Kaalberg. So Barb, this is a piece penciled by Jeff Johnson. Tell us how, this is a gorgeous piece. Tell us how this piece happened.
Well, Jeff Johnson and I used to work on Solitaire for Malibu, and we did the entire series. I inked over his pencils. We were a great team.
Did you ink every issue he penciled?
Yep.
Sweet. I don't think I realized that. And I just got to say, I continue, and Kurtis, feel me here, I continue to love all of these Malibu connections.
Yep. And so I contacted him and I said, you want to work together again? I mean, it's only been 25 years. And he jumped at the chance and was very quick to say that he wanted to do Divinity. And he did this wonderful piece. It comes off very Art Nouveau.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love it. And it's well worth the price of $200.
It really is.
That's a bargain.
It is. And, Alex pushes me all the time. Variant covers, Roland, variant covers, Roland, variant covers. And, of course, he's got his thumbs up, right? And I'm always trying to figure out, well, how can we make that happen? How do we do that? To just add another cover? This is one of those I look at, I'm like, man, we got to figure out some way to get this on a cover.
I routinely sell pieces like this at conventions for $300 to $400.
Yeah.
So $200 is a bargain.
Yeah. This is should I go in there before someone snags it and up the price? Okay, so
you have to order right now.
Yeah, you better get it now. So next up is a Silverline friend or a friend to Silverline, Kevin West. Talk about this piece, Barb.
This one I had a hard time letting go.
Yeah.
I asked him if he would contribute, and he was happy to do so. And when I saw this piece, I'm like, oh, do I really have to put it on the Kickstarter? Can I keep it?
So what you have to do is sneaky tell some of your family members. Say, I really love this one. I really don't want to let it go. I just hate the thought of it. Like going into someone else's home. It's like a baby. And
yeah, that's a really good idea.
Yeah. You've got a birthday every year, right? I mean, Christmas is going to roll around before we know it. And
I mean, he is just one of the best artists I've ever seen. If I had to pick 2 or 3 artists that I would like to be able to draw like, Kevin would be one of them.
Kevin.
I do too.
Wow, really?
I do too. I have one.
So we have to say that because they didn't hear Brett. So Brett, I didn't hear who you said. Who said it? J3 on YouTube said they still have their sealed solitaire in the black poly bag.
And I said I do too. I still have one, couple actually.
Yeah,
wow.
I probably have one in my box somewhere.
I think I've got a couple of them too.
Do you really? What do you have them?
Why y'all Malibu sent them to me?
That's true. Kurtis is probably the one that stuck in your box.
Oh yeah, definitely. Those covers were awesome. For those that don't know, the covers all built to like a separate story.
It was like a triptych.
Yeah.
Oh, it was great. It was great.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Alex wants to do one of those too.
Yes, they all were like in sequence.
Yep.
Yeah, they were beautiful. And I think you've got a good idea though. If somebody doesn't snap this piece up, this Kevin West piece up by halfway through the Kickstarter, I'm going to get one of my family members to buy it because this is it's gorgeous.
Well, I do have to say this again. We love Kevin West because he has been he helped us out for the Cat and Mouse Kickstarter as well. So that's why I say Kevin, and all of them, of course, but Kevin is definitely a friend of Silverline. And the next one also is a good friend of Silverline. This one is Mitch Foust, who Mitch has I think his Kickstarter just finished.
Yes, and I participated in that.
I did too.
Gorgeous.
Yep. Mitch Foust does a Kickstarter once a year that features all the artwork. Mitch is a awesome artist, does a lot of fantasy art. And he does a Kickstarter for his collection once a year. He collects up all of the drawings, the sketches, the paintings, basically all the stuff that he did that year. And so here's something I asked him, right? So for those of you who've been paying attention, Mitch did us a mouse, right? And mouse is actually on our trading card. And it's beautiful. Barb inked it, and it's just a beautiful piece. I asked Mitch, right? I said, so is Mouse going to be in this one? He goes, oh yeah, she'll be in it, right? So Mouse will be a part of Mitch's sketchbook. But yeah, so Barb, how did this one happen? Did you just reach out to Mitch and say, hey?
I did. I inked the mouse piece for Cat and Mouse, and he was so thrilled with my inks on it that when I asked him to pencil for Divinity, he jumped at the chance. He was so sweet. He's just, I can't say enough good things about him.
You ever met him? Mitch is a great guy.
I've never met him.
Yeah, he's a Memphis guy. So I actually Mitch has a history in comic books. I don't know if you know that.
I do.
You do? You remember that? Mm-hmm. So for those of you and Mitch, every time I mention this to Mitch, he's like, "Oh, you don't have to bring that up, man." Mitch did the Last Generation comic by I think the publisher was Black Tie Studio. basically, and I remember buying it off the stands going, wow, that's a cool looking bear, right? Had this bear with a gun, not Boris the bear, but had this bear with this gun on it and like some sort of futuristic kind of setting. I'm like, that looks really cool. Well, it was a few years later when I actually met Mitch Foust. I'm like, oh, dude, you're the guy who does that. Yeah, those are my comics. But now he does mostly fantasy stuff. Great artist. And like I said, he is very much a friend of Silverline, has done, anytime we've reached out to say, hey, Mitch, you want to help us out? He's not even hesitated to say, yes, absolutely. So, yeah, fantastic piece. Someone needs to jump on that one as well. The next piece is Barb Kaalberg.
That's right. And before we get into this, I just want to break in here to say I just got a notification that Jimmy Palmiotti retweeted about our Kickstarter and told us good luck.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Yeah.
So,
I got some good Jimmy stories to tell you. If we ever get to the talking about some of our early convention experiences,
yeah,
I've got some good Jimmy stories.
I remember Jimmy and Joe back when they first started out, and they were pushing this little Ash can about this little comic called Ash way back, right when they first started.
You know what? I didn't even realize that I was thanked in the. They had this big long list of like 500 names and tiny little text that they thanked for their Ash comic, and I didn't realize that I had been thanked until someone pointed. It may have been John pointed it out to me, and I'm like, what? So I contacted Jimmy, and I said, Jimmy, I didn't do anything with Ash. Why are you thanking me? He goes, I'll tell you exactly why I'm thanking you, because you gave me my very first ever penciling job. He said, no one else would give me penciling work. Everyone wanted me to ink, he was an inker. And he said, you gave me my very first penciling job, which, by the way, if anyone's, making notes, I wrote the story. So I wrote the story, and Jimmy penciled a piece called Widowmaker for did I just say Widowmaker? Oh, the same name, Widowmaker? Oh, really? It's a completely different character. But yeah, it was a Malibu, to be a Malibu story.
And I've inked his wife, Amanda.
Amanda, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Amanda.
So,
all right, on to Rick
Holberg.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now he's another penciler that I inked way back when for Malibu, and we've been friends for a long time. Actually, for the 25th anniversary of Malibu, I went out to San Diego, and a bunch of us got together and did a big panel and took pictures and everything like that. And then Dave Olbrich and Rick Holberg and I went out to supper afterwards. So we got a chance to get caught up. So that was really, really nice. So when I asked him to do a sketch, he was very happy to do it for me. And I was happy to ink him again. He's got such a clean, crisp style. He's so classic. He's just very, very classic penciler. You could never go wrong with him.
Yeah. Of course, Rick was a penciler for Strangers. And which is how I kind of got to work with Rick, because I went over and took over Strangers around issue 3 or 4 or 5, something like that, after the Genesis stuff went away. And so I worked with Rick then until it disappeared, till the Ultraverse disappeared. Fantastic guy. Got a couple of good Rick stories too about the kinds of scripts he likes to work on. But we'll cover that for a different day. All right, so the next piece then. The next piece is original art cover colors. Let me make sure it's still available here. So you know what I need to add in here? This is an 11 by 17 piece, which means it's the same size as original art. This is what you're looking at here is the scan of the untouched hand colors. As we mentioned earlier, Steve Matson is hand coloring all this, and Steve did a lot of, I think Barb mentioned some of the stuff he did. Boris the Bear, he did a long run on Green Lantern for DC Comics. Something else I'm forgetting, but he was a hand color guy, and so when all the digital stuff came around, he was just one of those guys that just didn't make the leap to digital, and so
he phased out and went up to do Hollywood stuff and a bunch of other stuff, and he thought he was done.
Yeah. And of course, Barb, in her brilliance, reached out to him and said, "Hey, You want to do some comics? I haven't, and I'm paraphrasing Barb's story here, right? Oh, I don't do comics because I don't do the digital stuff. And she's like, I don't care. We love that kind of stuff. We want to make comic books. He goes, oh, okay, yeah, maybe. So I think he tried out a couple pages. He says, let me just try a couple pages to see how it works. And we loved it. Looked fantastic. I think he's able to get a look that I've not, I'm not saying anything bad about computer coloring. Okay. Computer coloring can do, especially with Becca here listening, right? Computer coloring can do a lot of stuff and do a lot of stuff easier that hand colors can't. I mean, we talked about color holds in the coloring segment. I love color holds. Those are not easy to do in something like this, but if there's just a look that you get with the hand colored stuff, and I don't know how to describe it. You artists maybe can help me here, but it's got that kind of uneven, like, I've got a brush that I've got these brush strokes that you can't really see the strokes, but you can see that it's kind of got some unevenness that I absolutely love. I think it's fantastic, and I think this would be a gorgeous piece.
But when hand coloring phased out in the 90s, when digital color was the thing, everybody wanted their books digital coloring, because that was the hot new thing. And of course, now it's been around for a long time, 25 years or so, and it's like, oh yeah, everything's digital colored now. What?
Yeah.
Hand colored? Oh my God. So what's old is new again.
Yeah. Well, and I know Becca and I had this conversation kind of early when she and I were first talking, is that, one of the things that I personally don't like, I don't like the over rendered colors that so many comics have today. And it's almost like some of the colors set out to prove how good they are. And, at coloring. And I just want to say, look, this is a comic book, right? You don't have to prove to me that you're a colorist supreme or can paint on the I don't want, this is a comic book, not a color. Started to say coloring book. This is a comic book. So kind of color it appropriately and don't over render everything. I like them a little bit simpler. And also,
I agree, Roland. Oh, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I was there during that transitional period from hand drawn to color. So I was a color designer, so we would do it by hand and then hand it off to the digital team. And I was working on a project with Joyce Chin, Art Adams' wife at the time. And I was this young guy. Okay, she's great. And I was this young guy trying to prove myself. And she said to me, she said, you have to be there in support of the pencils, of the inks. It's like watching a movie where the supporting actor tries to hog the stage.
Yeah.
Good point. Good
that
point.
is I think that's a great analogy. And I think that's what a lot of, and I'm not saying all, right, but I think that's what a lot of colors do today, is they kind of overpower the line art. And I'm a huge fan of line art. So I don't like to see it when I, look at the colors and I'm like, where are the lines? Where are the inks? I want to be able to see those big fat lines that the inkers have. I love big fat inky lines.
All right, last one.
Yep. Last but not least, then
definitely not least,
the original art Kickstarter cover. So Barb, you're gonna have to explain this one a little bit, because this is Mel Ruby is the cover, but it's Ruby, and this piece is Ruby Kaalberg. So talk about that a little bit.
Another penciler that I've worked on in the past. There's a lot of pencilers I've worked on in the past. I contacted him and asked him if he would be willing to participate in the Kickstarter, and he was very much willing. But it was only digital that he sent me, and I wanted a physical piece. So he sent me the digital, his digital artwork, completely inked, and I asked him if we could use that for the Kickstarter cover, and he says, yeah, sure, go ahead. So I actually colored that one. I colored the cover for the Kickstarter, and that's all Mel Ruby's inks and pencils. But he also gave me the pencils in digital form, and so I actually inked those up myself. So there's two versions of this particular artwork. There's the cover, and then there's this one-of-a-kind collaboration between Mel and myself.
Very cool. So, so yeah, this is a gorgeous piece, and I've gotten a lot of people commenting on because you colored the cover too, right? Yeah. So, and I've gotten a lot of people commenting on what a cool image that one is, and I agree. So, all right. So we spent a long time on the Kickstarter, but I feel that there's a lot of good stuff. People need to go out and back this Kickstarter. 2 brand new Silverline books that are both. And we've got a couple of new pledges since we've been talking. So if you're listening to us, thank you very much. But these are 2 brand new books. These are the first issues of 4-issue miniseries. And so, yeah, jump on. Jump on now. Okay, so really, you're probably here to hear us talk about what got us into comics. So I'm going to pick someone who's been kind of silent and
start with the other guys. I've done plenty of talking.
So you guys, I'm kind of watching. I'm going to play eeny, meeny, miny, mo here. So what we're looking in. So Brett, also Becca is doing some colors, and Tommy, are you coloring or inking, Becca?
I'm inking right now.
Okay, so Becca, are you inking that project?
Designs.
What's that?
Character designs.
Okay, cool. And Tommy, you're inking as well?
Yep.
All right, so and you're okay. So Brett, if you will, maybe try to ping them and put up some other art while we're talking. Can you do that and kind of every couple of minutes rotate one of them? What's it say again, Brett? If the art is up there, you can.
Yeah, we gotta screen share it before he can.
Okay,
use it.
So. Well, no, we want to see their art.
We can see enough of Thomas' face.
Oh, Royal Airships!
Thank
you so much. Yes, appreciate that very much. And I've got an alarm going off in my head. I got it, not in my head, on my. Where the heck is it?
Yeah.
Hang on for just a second. I got to get a cord.
Stop alarm. So, so we'll start. What we'll do, Brad. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna start with Becca to talk, and then after you talk, Becca, we're gonna pop your art up on the screen, so people can watch you ink some cool stuff. That work for you?
Oh
yes, yeah.
It's because I'm an idiot.
Oh. You said it, not me. Oh, I gotta. Okay, so all right.
Why is it upside down then? That's weird.
Right.
Because I have it upside down.
Okay.
Yeah, but you were gonna do Becca's, so
yes.
knock me out, and Becca, you gotta share your screen.
Yes. So she just did. She came in with a second account here. So we got Becca's iPad, or Becca's whatever it was called. Oh, okay. Same name. All right. So Becca, why on earth did you get into comic books?
Why did I get into comics? It was kind of an accident.
Good answer.
Kind of like a car crash?
Yeah.
Definitely. Funny story about that. Yes. In high school, I tried to take a creative writing class, but we didn't have a creative writing class. So instead, I had this class where all we did was read comics, which was the first time I read a comic. And I've always been into drawing, so I was like, oh, I can do both.
Yeah.
And then I got into a really bad car accident and decided, after surviving that, I was like, let me actually go back to school and go for this.
Wow.
Yeah. Good for you.
So quite literally a car accident.
Yes, yeah.
So was the car accident kind of the thing that made you decide, I'm going to do this?
Yeah, that was the thing that made me decide. Yeah, I fell 60 feet off a bridge.
Good grief.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I was just like, I survived this. Maybe I should start living my life how I want to live it.
Wow. How are you not like in a wheelchair or something?
It was a close call. One of my discs shot out into my spine, and the doctor was able to remove it and just fuse it together.
So you're a little bit shorter now.
Just a little bit, yeah. Everyone remind me of that.
Wow. So what were some of the first comics that that you read? You said you read some comics in high school. What were some of the first comics that you read? What stood out to you?
I read Blankets
by Craig Thompson. Sure.
Yeah, that was really good. The superhero comics was always like confusing to me because there's so many of them.
Yeah.
That I just never knew where to start because I grew up reading novels, so I like things that have a start and a finish. Definite one, not so many different storylines. But then I read The Runaways with Michael that I really enjoyed, and later on in life I got into like Saga and all of them.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and I like those type of comics, the ones that not so much superheroes, even though I love superheroes, don't get me wrong. But
but it's the idea of the beginning and the end, right?
Yeah, I like more of that style, and I'm a fantasy nerd, so.
Fantasy nerd. Me too. I'm a science fiction guy. So I think kind of what you're saying there, I think is one of the strengths of Silverline, because kind of what we're doing, we're doing these miniseries that will ultimately be packaged together as a trade or a graphic novel, and they're going to be a beginning, middle, and end, right? You're going to be able to read a story in one sitting, and that's not to say that they're ended as in nothing else happens, but it's going to be like you read the first Harry Potter book, you can read the second Harry Potter book, right? You can still, but in the first Harry Potter book you get a complete beginning, middle, and end of the story. That's what we want to do with the miniseries that we do, is give you a complete story so that you can enjoy it. And if it works, if people are liking it, then we can come back and do another one, right?
Yeah.
So who are some of the artists and or writers that you like or inspire you?
I'm still learning a bunch of new people.
Sure.
I've always loved Bernie Wrightson.
Wow. That's a great
one of my best friends, actually.
Really?
Really?
Yes.
Yes, I think I was my first year at school when he passed, but I just fell in love with his style, like the brushwork and all of that.
We were friends for a long time, a lot of years.
It's just, honestly, I wish I can get to that level of inking. Just
everybody wishes they could get to that level of inking.
It's absolutely amazing.
It's just hours, that's there's just, it's just, what is it? Someone, you've all heard the 10,000 hour thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you spend 10,000 hours at something, then you can become a master. Someone, I don't remember who it was. Someone said that the same applies to comics, but it's not about hours; it's about pages. And so, you become a master once you've done. And I'm just going to toss out a number because I don't remember how many pages that they said, but they were like something like, once you've done 1,000 pages, then you can say that you're a master at the craft.
Seriously?
Yeah.
So if I did 4,500 pages,
you're a master. Barb, you are a master. I mean, come on now.
It's always better if you can do it in less time.
Well, you know what?
I don't consider myself to be a master.
But that's okay. You don't have to. We can
Barb
all
is a master,
acknowledge.
but I've done that many, and I don't think I'm supposed to be a master.
I totally get it, but we can acknowledge the fact that you both are masters. And you don't have to feel like it, because I think that's key to being a master, is knowing that, okay, I've got 4,500 pages or whatever it is, but there's still so much I
hadn't
can
done
do.
that many pages. That's a lot of pages, I'm telling you.
Yeah. Somewhere between 4,500 and 5,000.
But that 1,000 thing, we'll pass that a long time ago.
Yeah. Again, I don't know if that translates to 10,000 hours, but it's the whole concept behind it all. That you have to put in some time before you can really be a master.
I think if any artist ever says to themselves, I'm as good as I'm ever going to get, and I'm completely satisfied with my work, then it's time to quit.
I agree.
That's the
Yeah.
truth. Yeah.
It's time to go be a door greeter at Walmart.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, you already did it all. Now it's time to relax, retire.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Sid, what about you? What got you into comics?
Well, we've talked, I think, on this show about some of the early things that, my dad read me comics when I was a kid. And Tarzan's one of the early things that he read me. And back when Gold Key had the Tarzan contract, which would have been a lot of Russ Manning in those days. And then I really, got to where I could go to the drugstore and buy my own comics about the time Joe Kubert took over Tarzan for DC. It was actually issue 3 that I discovered, or the 3rd issue. I think they continued Gold Key's numbering, but it was the 3rd DC issue, and they were retelling Tarzan of the Apes. And so I love those. I love Ripley's Believe It or Not, which was a horror comic in the day from Gold Key. And it's the storytelling. The art, of course, was interesting to me, and conveyed the story. But the storytelling really caught my attention. I liked Superman in those days. My dad had a friend who had actually been a huge Superman fan in his youth, and so he goes, "You ought to read Superman. I want you to read Superman." And he had been a fan of like the Superman TV series and everything, and remembered when George Reeves died and everything. But so Superman was interesting to me. Tarzan was interesting to me, and they moved the comic book rack out of the drugstore where I bought comics, and so we figured out that you could subscribe to comics, and so I didn't just subscribe to a lot, but I subscribed to Tarzan, probably to Korak, the son of Tarzan. And for some reason, I picked Superboy instead of Superman to subscribe to. And Superboy became Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes, and then just Legion of Superheroes. And Mike Grell took over at DC for Legion of Superheroes. And those just really captured my imagination. And of course, they were roughly, they were teenagers, essentially, a little bit older than me, but they were younger heroes, and maybe that was what appealed to me about Superboy. But
that's one of the reasons that a lot of these superheroes had teen sidekicks, because they created them thinking, oh, this is what we're going to do to, because as a storyteller, part of what you have to do as a storyteller is find some way to have the reader give something for the reader to identify with. And so, Superman was an adult male at that point in time. And so how do you get younger kids to identify? Well, you come up with Superboy, right? Or sidekicks.
Yes, yeah, Superboy and the whole Legion. And I loved Lightning Lad at that time. And he had Lightning Lad had a long history, and he had an artificial arm at one time, but now at that point he was back, and he had like a full body spandex suit that was very cosmic looking, and he had Cosmic Boy and all of the and Mon-El, of course, who's been and Brainiac 5, who were all brought into the Supergirl storyline on CW, but and those were all in the formative stage back then, or they had been around for a number of years, but they were reshaping them, and the Legion had its own comic for the first time and everything. But all of it really it was about capturing my imagination, and so that was what really was kind of at the heart of my comics interest. And I can remember reading comics over and over and over. I was an only child. My dad was pretty generous in letting me have comics, but you'd still read them up.
Yeah.
And I can remember in summer vacation times reading comics over and over, and then you would get to the backstories, the second stories like Eclipso, and even Eclipso, who is kind of a negative character but winds up doing good things. I kind of realized, as I read things and it finally got around to the backup stories, hey, there's good stuff going on here with Eclipso. he's kind of cool. So that was my intro into comics, and of course, comics got more and more cool as I got older and got into college and everything. But as far as writing comics, my interest in comics turned to storytelling, and I started out writing. The first things I could place were poetry, and then I placed poetry. I placed some short stories. Eventually, sold some novels, and started looking around for places to push my novels, to stump for my novels. And you and I met at I probably at Coast Con or NASA first. I don't remember which. Probably Coast Con in Biloxi, Mississippi.
Yeah, I think it was Coast Con.
Yeah, and I saw you guys around because you had a table, and then I think we wound up. Then suddenly we were on some panels together, and we got to talking at that point, and you said, well, have you ever thought about writing comics? And I go, well, yeah, but it's kind of a tough field to break into. And so, so you and I started talking, kicking some ideas around, and it started. I think conversation started at Coast Con in Biloxi, Mississippi, and continued at NASF, the New Orleans Science Fiction and Fantasy Festival, held in New Orleans.
And if you follow the Silverline Facebook page, I think either last week or a week before that, you will notice that Silverline posted some throwback photos that has you and I on a panel there.
Yeah, looks like a baby.
It was in the
mullet heaven.
I was just going to say, I was digging the mullet area too.
Sid, I meant to pass on to you. I showed it to your. I showed the pictures to your former boss Noelani, and her response back to me was like, "Look at all that hair on both of you."
and everybody had a lot of hair in those days. Some of us we still got some, but a lot in those days. But we started talking.
I need a haircut.
And Manta, me too. But I've got it like tacked down. But the Mantis Files became like my first idea. I think that we decided to move forward with, and an artist named Thomas Giles that you had found in New Orleans.
I've looked for him, by the way. I've looked for him, and I think the inker was Floyd Robinson. I've looked for both of them, and I have not been able to locate them at all.
That's unfortunate, because Thomas was great. Thomas was a great penciler.
Yep.
And he was in New Orleans, and so I lived in central Louisiana, and so it was great. But I could say, and Mantis goes to St. Louis Cemetery No. 2, and he could go out and experience it and weave it right in.
So one of the things that, before we move on to the next person, one of the things I actually want to kind of to and there may not be an answer from you, but what probably some may not know is, Sid, you've written like a dozen horror novels, right? I mean, about a dozen. I mean,
it's right at a dozen now when you get into you count everything.
Because you've written some straight horror novels, and then you've written some horror for younger readers, right?
Yeah. So I wrote 3 novels under the name Michael August for younger readers. Yeah, and I wrote a novel. One I talk about a lot because I'm really pleased with it. Is a novel called Disciples of the Serpent, which is tie into a series.
And I will, I have to say I'm very happy that I got to be one of your very early readers on that.
Early reader on that.
Yeah, we workshop that in our little private writers group.
Yeah, and actually a short story I wrote for a magazine called Cemetery Dance turned into a screenplay and then into a novel called Dark Hours. So it was 8 novels for a long time because I kind of got into corporate work and I stopped writing for a while. Wrote a graphic novel during that time, but um, came back and wrote two more recently. I have one kind of in the pipeline at Silverline at Crossroad Press called Fool's Run, a New Orleans noir novel.
Sure.
So that's in the editorial process somewhere.
I think I've read parts of that too, haven't I?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I
read a
thought so.
lot of that.
That's what I
and
thought.
it got reshaped a little bit in
Yeah.
in the final go around. But yeah, I've always been both.
So
I've
what
always
is
been
gonna
a
what?
comics writer and a novelist.
So what I was going to ask though is are there any early early horror comics that you could say might have influenced you specifically as like this is I want to write like my horror comics like this guy right here or
Well, certainly Bernie Wrightson. I mean,
Okay,
as an
yeah,
artist, was did beautiful stuff. I mean, beautiful horror stuff. And when they took the and actually, these are things that were influences on my novels. But when they took the magazine, the comic book rack out, was also around the time that black and white magazines were burgeoning. Warren had already existed, most famous for doing Vampirella and then
Right.
Creepy and Eerie, and a few other properties. They had been around a while, and Marvel, without an actual Marvel logo, was kind of mimicking those with black and white comics. And so I had some Creepy, some Eerie, some Vampirella. And I had, but these were magazines, and so the magazine rack remained, and that's kind of where I went to for
gotcha.
comics. And
Cool.
Vampire Tales was new, which there's a movie now with Michael Morbius, somewhere in the development.
Yeah.
I don't know how much the pandemic has affected it.
Which
But
was a Spider-Man villain.
He was a Spider-Man villain, and he kind of became his own lead character in a story each month in Vampire Tales.
Yeah.
And then there would be other stories. Now, some of them were things that Marvel was recycling. They had been in different monster horror titles that Marvel had through the years, but you'd get like, this magazine, it would have like, a ton of stories in it, a Morbius feature, and then several backup stories. And so that brought me into thinking about horror, especially horror short stories, a good bit. And interestingly, one time my cousin, I had a cousin that was visiting who was in those days a little more into horror than I was. And we went to the drugstore. This was when they still had the drugstore rack, the comics rack. And my dad took him and me, I think he was staying with us a few days or something, and he took both of us to the store and, goes, you guys pick you out some comics. And so I got Action Comics. I got, some Superman, some Batmans, and he got like House of Mystery, House of Secrets, some of those. And they all stayed with me because, he was just visiting. And so wound up reading, Cain and Abel. The Cain and Abel were the hosts of the this respective House of Secrets, House of Mystery, and each was a collection of horror short stories. And Bernie, I think Bernie Wrightson did some of the art on those and some of the covers. But so, had that slipped into the mix of my reading just because that was what my cousin was more interested in. And he now puts up cell phone towers, and I write horror. So
yeah, it just seems natural.
Yeah.
All right, very cool. Tommy, why don't you? So actually, before we go, Becca, let's go ahead and we'll talk about. This is a new project, right? That you're inking character designs for.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the artist is Chris Lanning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's the penciler.
Yep, he's the penciler. Sorry, I said artist, but I meant penciler because you're an artist as well. Yeah. And so this is for a project. We'll give you the name of it, but we'll talk about it more on down the line. This is for a project called Something Big. It's from Sid, and we'll get more into this project. As you can see, we're still in the character design phases, so it's very early on in this project, and so we'll maybe get the team on sometime and talk about this in the future.
It's actually a bit of a spoiler here. So
it is, yeah.
yeah.
All right, Tommy, kick Becca off, and then tell us what got you into comics.
All right, let me see if I can. Boom. Uh-oh. Did it work?
Did it work, Brett?
Share. I wish this was easier to do.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
I got into what not how I got into comics, but what made me start reading comics. You know, I kind of started doing it a little different than it was. It was more from the cartoons, Saturday morning cartoon kind of things, and the funny papers, and the Sunday comic strips, and the thing. That's where I started kind of. But Spider-Man was always my big guy. When I saw Spider-Man on the rack when I was little, and I pulled a Spider-Man comic book, it's like I love Spider-Man, and and do you guys remember the old TV show called The Electric Company? Do you remember that?
Of course,
it was
yes.
Yes.
You remember
Yeah.
they had a Spider-Man character on there?
Mm-hmm.
That was the first time I think I ever saw Spider-Man, and then I saw him on the stand, and I'm like, is that the same guy? Is that the same? and I was, love comics ever since then.
It's
So
the only reason I watched The Electric Company.
just to hope that guy would show up, right?
Yep. Of course, I knew who Spider-Man was already, but that was the only reason I watched The Electric Company. So hopefully I'd get a shot at Spider-Man.
I don't remember which was first for me, if it was that or if it was seeing it on the rack. I was a little kid, so, but that was for me, that was the very beginning of when I started liking comics.
Wow.
Yeah.
So at what point in time, so that's when you started liking comics, but at what point in time did you say, I want to do this? Was there a comic or an artist or something that just that inspired you?
I always used to draw back through grade school and then high school and stuff. I like to draw, even though I've got a computer science background, and that's what I went to college for. But it's I always liked to draw. I would draw stuff for all the kids in school. I'd make these little strips for the kid, comic strips, not stripping, but so I was just drawing all the time. I never took any drawing classes. I just picked things up.
And let's clarify, when you say for the kids in school, you meant your classmates, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly what
you were a kid too then, but yeah.
I was a kid, the other kids in school is what I meant to say.
Gotcha.
But it's kind of hard to draw and
talk. Yeah. But, we should have kept Becca on and let you talk, and then after you talk, move on.
but yeah, it's
late for Brent.
But it was really, really what got me doing comics was it was back at USM. I was in the dorm playing role-playing comic book games and stuff, and I met some guys there that were breaking into comics, and I kind of saw them doing it, and like, shit, I can. Oops, sorry.
Yeah.
I meant like, I can do that. So I still did my computer. Oh, there's my screen just flipped around crazy. I was like, I can draw. I can't draw that well, but I can draw. And then
I know what you said, because I know who you met at USM. You said if they can do it, I can do it.
That's exactly what I said. But I was an idiot because I couldn't do it. But I got I hung out with those guys. I don't know who they were.
I wouldn't know. I think we're gonna see some pictures maybe Thursday that has you in it from about 1990.
I know. But yeah, no, it was just it was like, what, and I always had the thing where I wanted to draw. Okay, so I started doing all the computer stuff. Yeah, then I'm changing the story up as I'm going. I got a computer science degree because I wanted to do games. I wanted to write games and all this stuff. I love the code. in a computer program. And so I knew I could draw to do my games codes, for all the graphics and stuff. And then when I got out of school, I just started hanging out with those guys. You're one of them.
I knew
y'all
that, but no one else
me,
did.
Yeah, I know, nobody. y'all dragged me screaming down this career that's turned out to be so cool, and I'm so happy. I'm so glad that you guys included me and helped me break in. And
thank goodness,
it's been a great ride for all this time. I'm still doing it. Still doing it today.
It's funny, kind of hearing you talk about that. I do kind of look back over kind of my time in comics, and I find that one of the things, and if you'd asked me this 30 years ago, I would have laughed at you, but I find one of the things that I can do, and my wife tells me this, she's like, I play the role of cheerleader really well. And it's not something I just said, you know what, I'm going to be a comics cheerleader, I'm going to encourage people. Nope. It's one of the things, because I think I love comic books so much, and when I see people having fun with it, it excites me, right? I mean, Becca, one of the things you and I have swapped messages about is, are you having fun? Is this fun for you? Because I do not want her to be sitting there going, man, I don't want to be doing this. This is no fun. I'd rather go back to the daycare than do this, right? Because because to me that just kind of defeats the purpose, and so but if you'd have said something to me like 30 years ago, I would have went, yeah, right, that's not me.
Well, one of the things I remember when trying to break in or hanging out with you guys is, I wanted to, at some point I went in, both feet. I wanted to do this so bad, and I was doing ink samples for you, and I was bringing them to your house, and I'd show you and all that kind of stuff, and you were like
every
okay,
10 days.
Yeah, I know. I was bugging the crap
like
out of
clockwork, just like clockwork, man.
And I was thinking that I was really good, but I wasn't. But I was thinking I was really good, and and at some point you were like, just keep practicing, and I'm like, well, I really want to break into comics. And then I heard you say, I don't think I've ever told you this. I heard you say that you were talking about needing somebody to help you do some lettering of something, and I'm like, well, I'm going to break in somehow. I'm going to do some lettering. So I did some letter. You don't remember this. I brought you some letter samples, and you go, why are you doing this? Keep with your inks. Don't do the lettering. You're so good at inking already. Just keep inking. You don't remember that?
I do not remember that at all. No.
Basically, you took my letters and like, you're going to be a good inker. Just so okay, forget the stupid lettering thing.
I do not remember
because I
that.
wanted to get in so bad. I was like, I've got to do something to get in, and you're just like, keep practicing with the inks. Keep practicing. You'll get there.
That's great.
You didn't want to steer me down the not that there's anything wrong with it. I mean, a bad letterer will kill a book just as much as a good letterer will make it look great. But it's like you're like, man, your inks are really getting good. Don't keep doing that. We need the artist part. We need somebody to do the art stuff. We can, because I think we know somebody that does lettering on the side. We're not going to mention people's names.
No.
No, when I thought, listen, you got past that one.
Yeah.
Before we move on, I want to change my answer, having heard his. The mention of the electric company made me remember when I was a little kid, I watched the Spider-Man cartoon series, and they had a Fantastic Four that we could get in those days. But the old Spider-Man, where it was a stationary background and they moved Spider-Man in front of it, and had of course the song
Spider-Man,
whatever a spider can. But that actually was around the same time. Very early. That was I loved that Spider-Man.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
All right, so yeah, Tommy, what are you inking there?
This is page 18 of Trumps.
Oh man, I love that last panel there, the way it's drawn. I can't wait to see you finish it. So let's move, because I think we're losing him fast. Let's move on to Brent.
All right.
Yes.
Brent.
Hey, good morning.
What got you into comics?
what got me, well, I got into comics because when I was 12, I was starting to get really into G.I. Joe figures and all this and that, and I was playing with those a lot. And a friend just said,
my
"Hey,"
mom used to call those dolls, playing with my G.I. Joe dolls.
but she was
They're not
mistaken.
dolls, Mama.
But she was wrong. They are not dolls. They will never be dolls. They will always be fully posable action figures. Yes. And
but Alex got G.I. Joe comics there. Look at that.
Yeah, yeah. But a friend said, "Hey, check this out," and he brought me an issue of G.I. Joe number 12. And what's so funny to me is that was, if he had brought issue 11 of it, I'm like, this is cool, or 10 or whatever. But 12 was the first chapter in this multi-linked storyline that had Snake Eyes and Gung Ho and Breaker and all these guys that I had the figures for, and I'm like, wow, it's like I'm seeing him, but they're in a story. I don't have to make up, things like, they're Cobra's attacking again. Why? I don't know. It's what they do, okay? But no longer. Now they were actually in a real story, and I was like, this is really cool. And so I just started following them, and after a while, I'm like, I don't know if I care about the toys anymore, but G.I. Joe is pretty awesome, so I'm going to just stick with it. So by then I was full on comics, or at least with G.I. Joe. And then I remember really specifically, Dad was in the military. The military bookstore was called the Stars and Stripes. And I went to the Stars and Stripes. I was in Germany, just fully ready to get the next issue of G.I. Joe. And it wasn't in, and I was like, I'm not going home empty-handed. So I wonder if they have any other comic books. And what do you know? They did. So I was like, there's one or two of them here. And I remember I picked up an issue of Avengers number 252. And I thumbed through it, and this is probably more info than you needed. But when I was a young kid, my parents got me these old maid cards that had all the Marvel superheroes on them, and Doctor Doom was the old maid because he just can't get a break. But one of the characters was the Vision, and I'm like, this guy's awesome. Who is this guy? And then I picked up 252, and I'm like, hey, he's in here. And what do you know? He's married to this hot mutant chick. That's awesome. Okay. So I bought it, and because I'm very impressionable, or at least I was back then, I'm sure I'm not anymore. But anyway, I just started buying the Avengers. And then I'm like, wow, I can buy all this stuff. So I became a Marvel guy practically overnight, and my friends would tell me about DC, and I'm like, I'm so not interested in you or your life choices. But I knew it was mostly because I just couldn't afford it. But anyway, so up through high school, up through college, I never quit, and people thought I was weird, and I'm like, well, you're weird, and that was the best I could come up with. But I remember reading Watchmen for the first time because I just heard about it. And I'm like, okay, this is about superheroes, but it's also about life in a way I never actually thought comics could do. And around that time, Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns also was out. And I remember thinking, I think I can be an adult and still like comics. I think it's okay. I don't have to submit to a board or anything like that. I'm just going to give myself permission to like comics as an adult. So I started reading a lot of that kind of stuff. And then one day, this was the 90s when all of the tri-cut covers were out, and Marvel was putting out all of this stuff that frankly wasn't very good, but it was very shiny and pretty, and I'm like, I don't even stuff anymore. I quit. So I sold my whole collection to a local used bookstore and punched myself in the face every day ever since. But the thing was, I still loved comics, and so I just buying them again, and that was when I knew they had me and there was no escape. So I just kept reading him. And then I started to get interested in writing. I started, I taught myself how to screenwrite. I did it through the correspondence course kind of thing. This is right around when the internet started getting big. So it might have been the last correspondence. I don't know. But anyway, so I learned that stuff, and I started writing, and I was working with a group, and I still do, making short films, and I was having a lot of fun with that. But in the last few years, I started realizing that the story, I was really enjoying getting to tell these kind of small scope stories. But a lot of times they took place in an office building, and that's because I work in an office building and we can shoot there for free. And I'm like, I would love to tell a story that was not in an office building. What about like a story in space, or with these huge explosions, or whatever, this and that? And I knew it would never happen. I could write them, and you'll notice that there's not really a market for people who like reading screenplays. The only people who buy those are other screenwriters who want to know how you did it so they can copy your style, basically. And there's nothing wrong with that. I do it all the time. But I was like, I would love to tell a real story that was fully presented, but could reflect what I actually want to tell without any limits at all. And it just hit me. That's what comics are. When you're writing comics, you don't have to worry about your special effects budget. You don't have to worry about getting Chris Evans to play the main character. You don't have to worry about if the cinematographer wants to do it another way, in which case he'll walk unless you give him a chance to do what he wants. You can just do what you want. It's like, that is actually really cool. So, and right around that time, Roland, a friend, introduced the two of us, and we just started eating a lot of Japanese food and talking about comics in the 80s. And so I would say, oh, I love this guy. And you're like, I know that guy. And I'm like, no way. Oh, yeah. And we would just sit and talk, and I just remember whenever we would talk and laugh, and then have to pee a lot because we'd been there 3 hours and we drank like 2 liters
so
of
much
Diet Coke.
So no diet for me, just Coke.
Yeah. So, and then I was like, well, hey, check it out. I want to try writing a comic story, and it's something that had been kicking around in my head. And you were like, well, I'll talk you through it, and let's just give it a shot. And
that goes back to that cheerleader thing.
Yeah.
It's,
I don't like picturing you in the outfit, but other than that, it's awesome. Yes, that's a very good strength of yours, Roland.
So I won't show you pictures from the Powder Puff football game when I was in high school then.
No.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, but I mean, and you were right. The funny thing is, when I look back on it, I just think about the fact that so many of us, especially at this time in our lives, we're just at this place where we're like, I think I might have spent all my creative capital, and now it's time to look at the important things like the stock market, which I'm like, well, then I'm toast because I don't give a crap about that stuff. So what am I going to do? And
I don't
then
even know anything
talking
about
to
it.
you, and you were like, there's no reason why you can't do this. And I'm like, you know what? He's right. Let's go get some Japanese food. And then and then we would just keep going. It was great.
And then you told me I like Del Taco too.
Del Taco. Yes. Fuel. So that's
very cool. It's wearing the sponsored shirt.
Yeah, my wife had this specially made for me actually because you can't buy it. So
Brent Larson is personally brought to you by Del Taco.
That's right.
The first time I ever ate at Del Taco,
like a NASCAR driver.
Yes, I'm the first human being sponsored by Del Taco. Yes.
So I remember because when Kablam is in session, right? I go down there probably every 4, 5, 6 weeks, something like that, and just try to grab lunch with them. And we were trying to decide where to go one time. And they said, what about Del Taco? And I said, well, I've never been to a Del Taco. And I said, what is it? And Tommy says, I'll never forget this. He says,
what did I say?
He says, it's Taco Bell with French fries.
Oh, yeah, that's what I did say.
That assessment is terribly overstated, and I cannot get behind it. I'm sorry.
So,
Yeah, there's no reason why that place should have French fries, but they have hamburgers too. So I don't know.
Well,
It's for the people that don't want tacos that get.
Well, then go somewhere else. Go to their big
Go to
Burger King or
Well,
something.
they're with their friends, you know, and so they.
Tommy's not really known as being an inclusive kind of guy.
Everyone has that one family member that whenever you go for Chinese or Mexican, they get the hamburger.
Yeah, that's my sister.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
and I've
yeah.
often said Del Taco's hamburgers are like 80% hamburgers. It's like they're trying and they almost got there. So really, what are you doing?
They
there?
put a
No, I
taco
don't mind
inside the
going there.
house.
It's a good place to go to, but it's just like you go in there and it's like burgers and they're gonna start doing hot dogs and stuff next, and then I'm not going again.
Well,
Right.
what I say is Del Taco, there's two kinds of people in this world. People who love Del Taco and people who can come to appreciate Del Taco, but they will never truly let the power of Del Taco into their hearts.
So you're one that loves Del Taco.
Favorite place in the world.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Tim, how about you, man? What got you into comics?
Well, I'll see if we can get this in here, but my arm there's kind of is the full story.
There's Stan Lee.
Yeah. But so the first two things were.
Did you have that when you were in my class?
I did not. I got that
Okay.
after I moved across the country again.
Okay, I was going to say,
second
because
time.
I think we would have actually talked about this if you were in the class with that.
If I walked into that, yeah.
Some guys actually did that in your class.
Yeah.
Skin stick and poke in the back of Roland's room. No. So my dad had his own collection of comics, just a few things, like early prints of Superman and Captain America and like one or two issues of the X-Men. I read that and I was like, all right, this is kind of cool. And then also the years we're going to put out here in the runs is probably going to be ostensibly more recent than some of the other people in chat here, since Becca, Alex, and I are kind of the onions of the crowd.
The babies.
So, but then I had a friend who had the 99 Astonishing X-Men run. And that's, we joked about that a couple weeks ago, but pouches made me the man I am today. And for me, it was more just the cool factor of what I saw, just a bunch of ripped people fighting. I was like, all right, I can get behind that.
Is that the Joss Whedon run?
99. Actually, I pulled that up because I was thinking about it.
John Cassidy, I think.
Let's see. I'm not sure if it was, but that's kind of what got me interested in comics again. Is just like, oh, this is a cool format. Because like Brent saying, like what we liked about it was anything happened. There was no special effects budget. They kind of the writers and artists said like, hey, this is cool. Let's put a giant blue man with wings on the sheet and see what happens. And I was super into it. Then that led me into getting my Star Wars fix with the Dark Empire comic series. And I was super into that. And then for a little bit, I phased out of comics. I transitioned more to like the novel side of stuff. And it wasn't until 2009-ish that Messiah Complex came out. The like the 3-year mega arc with X-Men, X-Force, and Cable. And just the fact that it was this massive serial story across multiple serials, again with very cool dudes with lots of pouches, and the fact that they're talking a lot of adult themes that I'm starting to kind of appreciate at the time as I'm starting to mature. I that kind of made me love the medium as a whole again. Was just this whole take on I mean, the traditional tropes of the X-Men lab, how we view other people, how we coexist, how taking different sides within our own ranks, and this the different nuances that were pushed with this. And Cable had this whole like self versus self storyline that they did with Stripe, which I thought was really cool. So then I started reading everything Cable. In 2014 was the X-Force series written by Simon Spurrier with art done by Rocky Kim. And at that point, I was super into Kojima type stuff and his whole weird art style. And so I saw Rocky Kim do the art for this X-Force and how weird and cool it was. I'm like, I just wanted to make something cool enough that Rocky Kim would do art for it. Just the cool factor of it was so much for me. And so at that point, I'm like, well, I don't really know how I go about doing this. So I started writing prose and I wrote a couple short stories, got them published. And then I thought, well, what about video games? Because I see these ads for a school called Full Sail, and they talk about writing video games, and that's a visual art form. So I enrolled. And then we get to your class and talk about writing comics. I'm like, oh, this is what I want to do. That really kind of helped set me up for writing much more visually. And then, of course, through the wonders of nepotism, got me here.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
You know, it's funny. It's the way the world works. And the one thing I will say, one of the things I like, and Sid used to teach there. He taught there for several years. One of the things that I like about Full Sail is that, and I'm guessing the Kubert School is probably this way too, is they try to focus on real world education. And so one of the things that they work hard to do is get not just people in there who have a degree, but people who have worked in the industry from which they're going to teach. So like when Sid was there, he taught horror stuff, horror,
horror, mystery, and suspense.
Thank you. Yeah. But you know, here's a guy who's had the experience in the industry writing that thing, and now he gets to teach it. And so one of the things that you know I try to always talk about in class is that, you know, it's a lot of times it's not really always what you can do, but a lot of times it's who you know. I mean,
you still got to be able to do the work.
Yeah, of course, you have to be able to do the work. But yeah. You know, I'm going to say, I'm going to use Becca as an example here. You know, Becca is obviously super talented. We've seen her stuff, but probably she wouldn't be here if Alex hadn't said, "Hey, there's a connection here, right? I got something that's a possibility." So Becca knew Alex, who was already doing stuff for us. And that's kind of how that, again, Becca, as Tommy was saying, you got to be able to do the stuff. Becca could do the stuff, but her connection with Alex is what made it happen.
Alex.
But you know, but that is how the world works. And so I am excited that I get to actually say that in class, and my supervisors above me don't go, "No, you can't tell them that. You can't tell them that they need to know people." I'm like, but you know, if they did, I would probably tell them anyway. But because, you know, a lot of times schools want to push that's what you know, not necessarily who you know, and I think there's a little bit of both. You got to know the stuff. But yeah, if you know some people, it's gonna help.
Yeah.
Nepotism. I hadn't thought about it that way.
It's pretty much that way in every industry.
Yeah,
it totally is in the film industry.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things I'd say in class is like people want to work with people that they know, and you know, I use Sid as an example frequently. Is that, you know, part of I'm sorry, I'm trying to read Alex's thing there. Part of the reason, you know, I anytime I'm doing something comic-y, you know, this is Silverline 3.0, but anytime the new Silverline one of the first phone calls I make, because I know Sid. I like Sid. I assume Sid likes me because he hangs out with me, right? I know what he can do. I know that I know that he's a good writer, and I know that he can deliver. And so it's easy, because I mean, Sid's super talented, but it's also easy because I know him, and it's easier to work with Sid than to try to wander around and look for someone else who might also be able to tell good stories. But I know Sid. I've known him for a long time, so it's fun to work with him. And that's just the way it goes. Okay, so I was gonna holler at John, but he looks like he's having internet connections. Oh, there's John. He's back. So John, you can hear me. It's John. You want to go? You good to go?
Sure, I'm up. I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
Don't want to be last like gym class, although I think I may be last.
No, you're not. No, you're not. Yeah, that's
right,
kind of why I was
cool,
wanting to call on you. And yeah, so what got you into comics?
Oh my God, I don't know. I don't even know where to start. As we've been listening to everybody's stories, I see that there's a lot of contemporaries in here with me, from the different generations. I'm kind of able to steal and pick some of the different thoughts. Brent, you and I share the love for G.I. Joe, and that's definitely part of my story. Sidney, you mentioned that you were an only child and you did a lot of reading, and your parents supported that. That's with me too. Kurtis, when you said Joyce Chin and Art Adams, my jaw dropped. I'm like, oh my God, I love his stuff. When I was a kid, like way before even comics, I was really a voracious reader. You know how in elementary school they send out those Scholastic book orders and you could order whatever books that you want? Well, usually half of the class order was mine. So my parents were totally supportive of buying me anything I wanted to read as long as I read it. So that was awesome, having parents that really understood that reading was such an important skill and to be able to read well. They didn't care what I read as long as I was reading, and that was awesome. I had an aunt and uncle. Well, I have an aunt and uncle that were big comic book fans too. They read mostly like the Archies and the Richie Riches, the other Harveys. So they would always gift me a bunch of their comics. There were some superheroes sprinkled in there too, so I was familiar, but those were kind of like the primary ones I got from Uncle Mike and Aunt A. When I went to visit my grandma's house on my mom's side, there was always a stack of DC comics that were left behind from one of my uncles. So I was always reading through those, and my favorite issue of that was Batman versus the Hangman. It was the coolest cover ever, and it's like every time I'm going to grandma's, I'm like, I'm reading comics, this is great. And then here's a throwback to show how old I am. I still remember a specific day that my dad and I were in the A&P looking on the spinner rack. A&P, yep. And then there was a specific issue of Spider-Man that I saw. I was like, ooh, I need this one. And he hooked me up with that, as well as a Hanna-Barbera issue. So, kind of like both ends of the spectrum there. As a kid, the holiest of all holidays that's near and dear to my heart. I know we probably shouldn't talk religion because that could kind of drive some people away. But my
Free Comic Book Day is not a holiday.
No. But the first release date of Star Wars is, and that's what I was going for.
Oh, okay.
I have a religious icon tattooed on my forearm.
You got one on the forearm? What do you have?
Oh, you missed his Stan Lee?
He's got Stan Lee.
Oh, okay. Well, I saw the Stan Lee.
Okay. I also have Han Solo's HP 44 and Boba Fett's Mandalorian.
Cool.
Oh, very cool. In my last job, I actually had a shrine to Boba Fett in my office, and so there were like 9 carded figures behind me, a whole bunch of stuff on the side, a whole nother thing. Today, I did a Target run because I was out of Diet Pepsi and needed drinks. Sure. There's a real super cool Boba Fett phone holder that I just picked up that has wiring. Anyway, but I digress. So, May 25th, 1977 really was the starting point that changed my whole life. I was 4 years old. I'm thrust into this whole new world, and I really think that changed. Very nice. It really kind of changed the trajectory of how my brain worked. And all of a sudden, I wanted to think and create and all the different stories. Oh my God, that was everything. My true collecting started in junior high. In 6th grade with Spider-Man, actually. I was in a social studies class taking an exam. I was done early. My buddy Steve, who was next to me, was done early. He had 2 comics on his desk. I'm like, hey, what are those? And he gave me a Spider-Man one to read, and I was hooked.
Me too.
Which one?
Oh, no, I remember those days.
Yeah.
Yep. So this would have been like 84, 85-ish. There was a convenient food store that was in the strip mall in front of my junior high in Glendale Heights, Illinois. And they also, I heard the words before, that's why I know y'all are my contemporaries, spinner rack. They had a spinner rack. And I started putting down what was going to be out every week. I had my little spiral notebook, so I knew what was going to go in there. It got to the point where I'd rush in there and I'd like, okay, new comics. And they're like, we didn't even open the package yet. We didn't even inventory the books yet. I'm like, I'll do it. So I inventoried their books, made sure they were all there, and I was able to get the best ones out of there. That was really, really cool. So when I was in 7th grade, I'm in music class, and I'm talking to one of the students. And when I was a kid, I was kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Because I don't want to totally put myself naive. All right, I was naive. And I had a kid in my music class telling me about this store that he went to that was nothing but comics. And I'm like, yeah, right. Okay, I'm not falling for that. There's no way there's a store just about comics. He's like, oh, yeah, there is. And there's a super cool story, 12 issues, $20. I'll pick it up for you if you want it. And I'm like, okay. I'm thinking I'm going to get ripped off for $20 here, right? So I give him $20. Comes back the next week. The complete set of Marvel Superhero Secret Wars, issues 1 through 12.
Oh, wow.
Now we're in my hand. And I read those, and I'm like, oh, my God, this is amazing. At the same time, there was another student that was in 7th grade with me whose dad owned a different convenient food store. And so he would actually bring comics to the school, sell them to the kids at school because they never even made it to their spinner rack. He charged us like 10 cents more per book for delivery fee. So his dad had his own internal distribution network. But that's how like those things were getting into my hands. And that's how I got to sample different titles because, whatever he brought in, I'm like, that looks cool. I'll try it. That looks cool. I'll try it. I found out about this mysterious comic book store. It was called Comic Cave. It was in Wheaton, Illinois. And their address was 123 and a half Front Street. The half being it was in a basement. So you have the downtown area. You had to go down the stairs, kind of like Cheers, only there were more stairs. And it was dark and it was awesome. I walked in and I'm like, oh my God, I'm home. This is where I need to be. I vividly remember that first visit, seeing, since I know you guys were all talking sidekicks earlier, the X-Men versus Teen Titans crossover book was already on like their wall behind. That was important. I remember on the newsstand their newsstand at that point, the G.I. Joe issue with Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow both standing with their swords drawn, explosion behind them. I remember Nightcrawler's miniseries. I remember Rocket Raccoon's miniseries was on the shelves. It was just like, oh my God, all these things I've never seen before. And I'm just like, this is amazing. So going along with that, I always made my pilgrimages to the comic stores. There was one in Glen Ellen in Illinois that I really liked. I loved, hanging out with the owner. His name was Jeff, super nice guy. And they wound up giving me a job eventually because I just wouldn't go away. So I would hang out. Is there anything you want me to do? Is there anything I can do? And they're like, well, you want to organize books? I'm like, okay. So I'm organizing books, and then they took me on, for like store credit. I'm like, okay. So that worked out well. And then as I got older, I wound up working in that store. Then I wound up working in a different store and taking over as manager for that. So like really, if you take a look at it, comic books have been in my blood. It is written into my DNA ever since I was like the wee little one. When I was managing the stuff in college, that's when the industry started changing. That's where Malibu launched. That's when Image launched. I was there for the whole distribution wars with Capital, Diamond, I'll watch my mouth. I won't say the phrase I want to, but the horrific disaster that was Heroes World. The death of Superman. I'm the one who was carrying the box into a store with the location in a mall. With the Superman 75, had a dude try to reach into the box, and I turned, and I was like thinner back in the day and a little tougher looking. I'm like, you touch my box again, I'm gonna break your wrist, and so like that was cool. What got me into creating on that flip? So when one day I was working in the comic shop, and I was playing videos, and I was playing the old Battle of the Planets cartoon. If any of y'all remember Battle of the Planets, anyone? Oh, you gotta Google this. Had a great talk about.
Man.
What's that? Tommy, you got it?
Gotcha Man, right? Was the Japanese?
No, it's not Gotcha Man. It's Battle of the Planets. Oh, okay. Actually, you know what? I only said it that way because it's like you led me into this conversation. So I'm watching Battle of the Planets, which was the first U.S. interpretation of the Japanese Gotcha Man. And there's this guy who comes into the store and he looks at the screen and he's like, "Oh, Gotcha Man." I'm like, "No, Battle of the Planets." He's like, "Gotcha Man." I'm like, "No, Battle of the Planets." And it just went just like you and I did, Tommy. Although we didn't prepare that. And the guy wound up being a guy named Brian. And so he knew the Japanese version. I knew the American version. We started talking. He was an artist. And so he's the first artist I ever collaborated with. And we're like, let's do something. So I'm like, I could try to get the license for Battle of the Planets. And we could make our own book. And he wound up drawing a couple pages, and it didn't go any further. And then I wanted to write a story and have him illustrate it to submit to my favorite publisher, Silverline. He drew about a page and a half of a cat and mouse story of the old team, but that never went anywhere. Comic shop I was working at started publishing their own books. That's when the kind of lights started going off, saying maybe I should start looking at trying to get in on this. The owner of the store knew a guy named Mark Paniccia. Does anybody here know Mark Paniccia's name?
Yeah, we know Mark.
Yeah, Malibu.
Malibu, Marvel, yes. So Mark actually was introduced to me from the owner of the store. He was putting out a new book called Manga Newswatch Quarterly.
Right.
And
this is just before Malibu.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it was after he did Pyramid Comics, but before Malibu. So my first published work ever was in Manga Newswatch Quarterly #1. And it was a review of Robotech 2: The Sentinels. So now we've got the anime stuff coming in too. Mark told me if I ever wanted to do a short story for his book, let him know. I had my buddy Brian start drawing that. 2.5 pages got done, never finished. And then I also wound up doing a article for him on the anime Vampire Hunter D that was published in a later book. So I did take my buddy Brian. He did my original designs for Sniper and Rook in the basement of my college, the main building in my college. My other main character, Ripper, his designs were done by my good friend Anders Eriksson. If any of you have ever heard of a website called nightmaregloves.com, that's Anders. He does beautiful replica Freddy Krueger gloves, and he's actually friends with and I can't believe I'm blanking on his name right now. I've been doing so well here. Robert Englund. So he knows knows Robert's wife, and Robert actually wears some of his gloves to some of his appearances. So he did the design work for me on Ripper, which was really, really cool. You want me to go into favorite artists?
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say we're beginning to run a little bit low on time here. Let's let's go ahead. So Kurtis.
Yes. Okay. So the things that got me into comics were actually starting with Chris Claremont's run on X-Men.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. And I came in on the Paul Smith end of it. So where it was Paul Smith, John Romita Jr., Art Adams, just great stuff. And then like Brent, G.I. Joe, Larry Hama is a genius. He elevated that property so high that the G.I. Joe series was awesome. So those got me into it. And then when I got into indies, Cat and Mouse of all things. And then as far as career-wise, I'll try and kind of keep it quick, give a version of it. I was about 14 or 15, and I had gotten a tour of the Malibu Comics office, which was near where I lived for my birthday. My dad called them and said, my kid loves comic books, give him a tour. So I got a tour of the place. About a week or so passed, and my dad said, hey, you should try and get a job there, get an internship. So my mom dropped me off there. I couldn't even drive. And I went to ask to speak to Chris Ulm, the editor-in-chief, and didn't think anything about a 14 or 15-year-old kid walking into an office and asking to speak to essentially the second person in charge.
Yeah.
And I was completely turned down and chewed up by the receptionist and kicked out, and just sitting on a bench, waiting for mommy to pick me up.
No,
and
seriously?
The secretary chewed me out and just said he does not see people without appointments. I said I can wait. She says, what do you want? I said, I want to work in comic books. I'm volunteering my services.
Was that
she
Sherry?
picked up she picked up the receiver to the phone, like she pretending like she was going through the office, and she goes, does anybody want free work here? And then hung up and said, no, I think you should go now.
No way! Oh my gosh!
It was brutal. So I walked outside, and I'm just sitting like depressed on this bench, waiting for my mom to pick me up because she said she'd come back in 15 minutes or something. And I'll never forget, I saw this turquoise blue Saab rolling through the parking lot. Yeah,
Chris
and
Ulm.
it was Chris Ulm, the editor-in-chief. So I still to this day don't know, other than just the sheer passion for comic books that possessed me. But I stood up and I started chasing the car on foot through the parking lot. And he parked his car, and I ran up to him as his car door was opening. I think he was probably a little startled. And in like one breath, I just said, my name's Kurtis Fujita. You gave me a tour last week for doing this. I really want to work in comic books. I'll do anything. I'll clean toilets. I'll do anything. I just want to work in comic books. And he goes, okay, come on in. You're hired. And,
that is so Chris Ulm.
Yeah, and we walked by Sherry, and we walked through the entrance, and he goes, Sherry, this is Kurtis. He's our new intern. He's going to be starting next week. And he
did you stick your, did you go when you walked by?
Oh no, I was just so happy. We walked through. I met everybody. I started out unpaid as an intern, and then a couple weeks or a month later, I was told you're going to be working behind our new editor, and his name's Roland Mann. He's the guy that did Cat and Mouse. And I thought it was going to be because I'm half Japanese and it's a ninja comic book. I figured it was this Asian guy, and in walks Roland, and the rest is history. But God bless Chris Ulm. He had to eventually tell me every time I saw him and he said anything to me. I said, "Thank you so much for this opportunity." He finally said, "You got to stop thanking me. Just do your job.
Do your job and shut up. Get to work."
Yeah, so that's kind of how it all came together. He's great. And Roland was awesome. Roland was like the best boss ever.
we love comics. It's funny because hearing Tim say something about being the babies of the group, I still think of Kurtis kind of that way, as like the baby of the group, right? I know that's not the case in this instance, but because when I met him, he was 15. And so he was the 15-year-old intern running around the company doing anything. And the thing about it is like, and you could say, Kurtis, there's a spot on that floor. Go look it up. Okay.
Oh.
Would just do it with a smile, right? Not that we ever abused Kurtis, but it's just that was at least not that I remember anyway. It's just he was so happy to do anything and everything. He never complained about a single thing. And we had him do really grunt. Kurtis, I need you to go make like 15 photocopies of all these things here. Okay. Right. And everything was just like, yeah, I'll do it. I'm happy to go do this thing. So,
well, I had all you guys fooled because, you gave me a stack of comic book pages. Here I am, a comic book fan. I have, pencils, from Howard Chaykin doing a cover for something,
That's cool.
Who else does that? And you're paying me to do this? There you go.
Alex, what about you? What got you into comics?
So I didn't like to read when I was a kid. I wasn't a big fan of reading books at all, and so my parents' solution was, well, he likes drawing, because I was drawing from a pretty young age. So my dad was a fan of comic books thanks to his uncle. So just started taking me to the library and showing me the graphic novels that they had available. So kind of like some early 2000s JLA stuff. Trying to remember the creative team, and some ElfQuest, and just a bunch of bunch of whatever was at the library I would read. And that's how it began. And I didn't even really go to a comic book shop till I was probably a teenager, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Just because I didn't know they existed.
Yeah.
As far
Most
as
of America doesn't.
Yeah, as far as I knew, comic books were really about the TV shows. I didn't think that the comics came first at that point, just because I was super into the Justice League show, the animated Justice League cartoon show.
That's good.
I was a really big fan of that. And
Batman animated, all that kind of
oh
stuff.
Yeah, and just watching reruns, all that, because they're all saying they're the babies of the group, then I must be like an infant, like first week, second week old.
I like how on the Comic Chat Authority they labeled you as something like the youngest pencilist they've ever talked to, or something like that. The youngest artist. Yeah. He said, "Is this Silverline's youngest penciler?" Which is funny because I'm not, because Thomas, I think, is actually youngest. So. Oh, really? Thomas is younger than you?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Secret's unveiled.
Secret is unveiled. Yeah.
But yeah. So, and I kind of fell out of comics, not just because I didn't know where to get them, and I was more into sports when I was younger, and really just cartoons and movies. That's all I knew comics really were. And at that point, I started learning that this was all coming from sources of comics, and it wasn't the original material that these movies and TV shows were based on, just because common sense.
Yeah.
But I took a trip to a family trip to upstate New York, and along the way we ended up visiting some comic shops in Tennessee, I think, and Midtown Comics in New York, because my little brother wanted to go. He wanted to get some comic books, and so I picked up some random DC books, and the love of comics was ignited or reignited. And but then I also learned, hey, this is an opportunity to have a job. I was always into drawing comics, and not drawing comics, but drawing comic characters.
Yeah.
And so I was like, hey, let's shift gears here. And so for about a year after that, I just was drawing pinups and stuff like that. And then my senior year of high school, I started drawing actual sequential pages. They're terrible, but
well, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, you gotta get some type of content, and
you
can't get to page 1000 until you've started page 1, right?
Correct. Yeah.
There you go. That's a good one. Write that one down. That's a good one. I like that. That's a good one.
For my senior trip, went to New York with my dad. Went to New York Comic Con, and we went to a panel about the Kubert School. I already knew about the Kubert School because the paper that they use, that they make, ironically. But and I was originally planning to go to SCAD. I was told from a comic artist not to go to SCAD, so I was kind of like, where should I go now? So went to the Kubert School panel, and I decided then, I was like, all right, well, let's make that the goal. So then applied, got accepted, and here I am, 3 years after having no life in Jersey, and now I'm drawing cat and mouse.
Becca, it looks like she's wanting to say something about.
I'm a Jersey girl, okay?
No, it's nothing against
Born and raised.
I'm saying
bad about Jersey.
It's the schoolwork, It's
oh yeah, that area is just the middle of nowhere.
Well, no. Like there was so much work that you didn't really have time to be going out and exploring. Or at least I didn't.
Yeah.
But Jersey is a beautiful, beautiful state.
What I find weird is
few times actually ventured.
You live in Texas, but you took a trip to upstate New York, so you went to comic shops in Tennessee.
Yeah, all over the place.
It's like, why Tennessee, right?
Well, we stopped. There was a pit stop in Nashville, Tennessee. So that's the first shop my brother wanted to go to. So
gotcha. So now is your brother still into comics?
He's into the comic book TV shows. I try to buy him comics. I don't know if he really reads them. He does watch a lot of like comic YouTube videos.
I bet he likes Cat and Mouse.
Hopefully he does.
Yeah. He does now.
Yeah. But I'm not really sure just why he wanted to go to the comic book shop, but he did. So here we are.
Huh. Very cool. Now, so who are I already know, but who are a couple of your influences? Who and what artists inspire you?
So when I was getting back into comics, he was on Batman, and I was a big Batman fan. Still am, but Greg Capullo, just really fell in love with his work, and going back to his previous works and purchasing those and reading those was a lot of fun. And he's always been, to me, he's on top of the mountain in the current comic book industry. Some others currently would probably be like Gary Frank. I think anything he does is just crazy. Although he retired from comics,
right? He did some Malibu work. What did he do? What did he do, Kurtis? Do you remember? You don't remember? Yeah, I'm trying to think too. I can't remember. I want to say he did some stuff for Malibu, but I can't remember what it was.
But yeah, so Stuart Monin is the one that retired from comics, but he's another one recently, just from the school, a bunch of people saying his stuff was great, and I've never read anything really from him. But recently fell in love with him over the past 2 years, and Sean Murphy is another example, just because his stuff was so different from Greg Capullo and some of these other artists that I was following. So, but it was also just something that caught my eye a lot. But yeah, those are some random names.
Very cool. Barb, how about you and I skip our stories this time?
Yeah, we're already running over.
Yeah. Okay. That Brett says he's got a question, so let's address some questions, and then we'll kind of say the good nights and stuff. Yeah, we got plenty of other streams.
I think we should stay on until the Kickstarter is fully funded.
Kind of like a Jerry Lewis telethon.
Yeah.
We're like Brent's like I could almost hear Brent now. Oh Lord, no. All right, Brent, what's the question?
No Roland Mann.
He's a cheerleader.
Great, yeah.
Practice.
Yeah,
that's the truth.
So wait a minute. So yeah, I get. So hold on. Brett, ask the question again, because I'm thinking that there's a specific thing they're asking about. All right, so because no one can hear you, right? All right, so Brett said the question is that Royal Airships, thank you, Royal Airships, had asked this question. It says, what is the best or most practical thing to learn to get into the comics business the quickest? Okay, so I think that's a slightly different question than just practice. So anybody got any thoughts? So I'm hearing that should you pencil, should you ink, should you color, should you letter, what should you do? Anybody got any thoughts on that?
Don't be a jerk.
Don't be a jerk. Absolutely, yeah. Nobody wants to work with a jerk.
I'd say self-publish your own book. Do it all, and then come to I'm not saying use Kablam, but come to a place where you can print your book, and just that's how you break into comics. You just do your own. Just draw it all real quick and publish it.
I would have to agree with that. If you are good enough, you're going to get noticed.
Yeah.
Put out your own book and people will notice.
Yeah.
Guys, the artists, I mean, what is the baseline? I mean, is it penciling? If you know, where do you start developing your skill?
Depends on what you're interested in.
But I mean, is it penciling? Is it inking somebody
inking.
else's?
Yeah.
Well, I knew I wanted to be an inker because if I penciled, I'd be a year just penciling one issue because I am so slow. I can ink like the wind, but
it's probably been maybe what you're feeling strongest about.
Yeah, I was practical about it.
Yeah, I mean, from that, the best thing to learn, which kind of get like your core, like softer hard skills, and your hard skill, just find what you're like most passionate about. Soft skills, know what to put in your portfolio and know who to give your portfolio to.
Yeah.
And I would say too, like another thing that can't be overstated is be a fan of comics. I mean, if you're able to talk like what we're all talking here, as soon as you see the passion everybody has, when you say a certain title or a certain artist, and you get that editor or somebody around there to vibe with you on that, they will give you so much of a bigger chance than anything else. As long as your portfolio or your ability is good, that's a huge jump.
I will kind of add in from personal experience. I think what kind of helped lead to me getting here, speaking of Kurtis and just being passionate and vibing, I think it was like day one of Roland's class. Somehow Mech Warrior came up, and Roland said he did a Mech Warrior comic, and I'm like, I probably read that, and then we got detoured on Mech Warrior.
Yeah. You and I hit it off in class really quick because you had that, obvious passion for comics. Yes, of course, you were considerably younger than me, and we don't have the exact same experiences,
right.
But you had the passion, and so I think I'm going to echo, my answer is going to kind of echo what some of you guys said, is that I think you got to figure out if you're thinking about one thing, what is the one thing that you want to do that you think that you can get to the fastest? So if you're an artist, right, do you think that you can pencil, ink, or color better? Which of those things can you do best? That's probably the thing that you should focus on. It's very difficult for an artist to get in as a pencil, inker, and letter. I'm sorry, pencil, inker, and colors. It's very difficult to do that for lots of reasons, but it's not impossible. If you want to do it yourself, as Tommy was talking about, you could just do it all, and you're the boss, right? You can make your decisions. The other thing is try to, in your circles, try to find out needs, right? What do people need? Generally, I know I can speak like for Silverline, and we've got a couple submissions and some people that I'm talking with right now. For Silverline, one of our needs currently is coloring, and it's not that the artists that we have can't do it, but it's like their strengths are something else. So it's like Becca's now, right? She started off coloring, but she and I swapped some emails, and I learned from her she really enjoys inking. And so I'm like, okay, well, this thing, and she'd done a fantastic job on the colors. So it's like, okay, well, this thing's come up. So why don't you throw some inks on this, throw some inks on this, see what you think. And it's like, wow, these look really good. So she was able to, first feel a need for us, right, for Silverline, but then work into something that this is what she wants to do. So figure out what you want to do and focus on that, but be what's the word? Be agile, be able to malleable, be able to kind
flexible.
of flexible. That's really the word I was looking for. Be flexible, be able to kind of shift gears and go one way or the other. Know that it's hard as an artist. Know that it's hard to perfect all three skills. It's hard to be a perfect penciler and a perfect inker and a perfect colorist. It's hard to do all three of them. I'm not saying you can't, but it's just each of those is a different skill set. And so focus on the one that you are most interested in and that you think you're closest to accomplishing. If you're like, well, I'm really most interested in penciling, but I think I'm a better colorist. Well, focus on coloring because that may be your way in the door, right? And then you can still practice on getting on the pencil work. So when the opportunity arises, you can actually take that chance. and I see who Alex is penciling there. That's getting me pretty excited. So yeah. So anybody else have any thoughts for that?
Maybe if I can just dovetail off that one thing that, like what Roland was saying about just getting in there, not just so that you have the opportunity for people to know your name, but when you're in the industry and you're handling somebody's pencils, or you're looking at this person's link, or you're coloring this, you're in it, and you actually see how everybody else is doing things, and you're exposed to it, and your ability level will just start to skyrocket just by virtue of osmosis and being in there. So that's a huge part of it.
I believe in osmosis as far as creative goes. I really do. I think that's an important thing. Anyone else? Tommy's kissing his inks goodbye. Okay. I guess John's kind of cutting in and out here, so he's got that Chicago area internet.
Yeah, some internet connection that's been telling me low bandwidth. So I said, okay, I'll kill video for a little while.
Okay, so anybody else want to add anything there? I think we kind of covered
go to the Kickstarter.
Yes, go to Kickstarter.
What are we at now? They give us a total. What? How many?
Brett, post the link for us again. I'm refreshing my page here.
1865 is what I got.
1865. Sure
it was
enough.
17 something a while ago.
It was. Yep.
Yeah.
So,
that was a good year.
Yeah, it was a good year. 48 backers, 1865. So those of you who backed during this the stream, thank you very much. As Barb says, please spread the word. Let everyone know that you have backed and supported the Silverline double feature. 2 brand new books from Silverline. And as always, please like and share and follow. Please continue to subscribe. We need you to subscribe on YouTube to get our numbers up. The last I saw, we had 114. I'm not sure where we're at now. 121 subscribers now. So thank you for the new subscribers.
Yeah, that's great.
Even if you can't afford to participate in the Kickstarter, just sharing our posts about it all over your Facebook page is a huge help.
Your Facebook page, your Twitter, other social, any social media that you do, share it, and say something about it too. Tell folks that, hey, you're familiar with the project and you think it's a good to back. Target people that like comic books, and send something to them. So we'll go around Murderer's Row here, and we'll tell folks where you can find. Tell folks where they can find you online. Barb, we'll start with you. Where can folks find you on the interwebs?
You can either just Google Barbara Kaalberg, because I'm the only one on the internet. It's Kaalberg. You can find me under that name on Facebook and Twitter.
Becca, how about you? Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Hi, you can find me on Twitter, apparently. At RR_Winslow890. You can find me on Instagram as well at comic_art with K's instead of C's. And you can find me on
what's the 890? Is there a special code?
890? Oh, that's my birthday.
Oh, okay.
Well, now we can't forget.
Yes.
Tim TK, where can people find you on the Webbers?
They can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Tim TK Writer. I am also on Twitch, while we're going live tonight, at Agro Bacon, and I am on TikTok at Tim Doesn't TikTok.
Tim, what are you going to be streaming tonight?
I think League of Legends.
League of Legends.
Cool.
I haven't really heard anything good about that game, but okay.
It's very stressful and the community is very toxic, so it's perfect.
Tommy, what about you? Where can people find you on the interwebs?
You just look for Florimonte, FLORIMONTE, pretty much on all the different social places. And InfernoStudios.com is my personal website. And
cool.
I'm also on TikTok. It's Tommy Don't TikTok. I need 10 subscribers, 10 followers, and then I'll do a TikTok. 10. I only got 4. So until I get 10. See,
send
you guys.
send a message to my daughter. She's on TikTok. So send a message to her and say your dad said to follow me.
She's one of the 4.
Oh, she's one of the 4.
She's already there.
Okay.
And then all of her followers may, why are all these like weird old dudes duetting you?
I mean, I could do the thing.
Yeah. So,
Whatever that's.
So are the restaurants around you opened up around Kablam?
Yeah, they are.
So I could come down here and we could grab lunch.
Yeah, we'll go to Del Taco if that's what you want.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Time for fries.
Delta
And gets me some fries. I'm gonna get I always got to swap the fries out for the chips, and then they charge me like $1 when I do it.
All right,
It's a chip place that I have to pay extra. I don't know.
The Silverline meetup will not be at a Comic-Con. It'll be at a Del Taco in Ohio.
Yeah. Sid, what about you? Where can people find you on the interwebs?
SidIsAlive.com. SID, SidIsAlive.com. And as always on Twitter.
That's a digital display there.
My name, my name on Twitter with an underscore between the first name and the last name.
Is that like from an old dot matrix printer?
No, that's digital. Somehow
it's a
or other he
laser.
shot that to the screen. I don't know. That's magic. How did
It's
you
a
do
laser. It's a laser.
Okay.
I got to do that. Let me get some paper.
HP laser. On Twitter, I've got a sticky note at the top right now with all of the places you can find me.
Cool.
And you can buy. There's even you can buy me a cup of coffee there.
Ah, wow.
So I do
Well,
that.
and also for those who are like, I'm not going to sit through all this. I'm putting all this information in the on the YouTube page, so you can find. I'll put all the links to all of our stuff there. Brent, what about you? Where can people find you on the interwebs?
I'm on Facebook at Brent Larson. I'm one of, and I'm on Instagram at Brent.Vector.
Nice. I'll leave him for last. Kurtis, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Sure. You can find me on Facebook. It's Kurtis Fujita. You can also find me via my martial arts school. So on Facebook, Tiger Crane Kung Fu, and on Instagram and YouTube as Tiger Crane 805. Hey, good job, Sid. I see that. You got it.
Yeah. I was very sorry to hear about the magazine. That's the one you work for, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
They just closed their doors down. Yeah.
I was very sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
And so Kurtis has been doing, you have been doing videos for your school to help people during the quarantine, to try to get them exercising, and that's where we've seen a lot of the moves there. Sid and Tommy were doing it, so we've been trying to share those as well, get people to learn them some Tiger Crane kung fu. I can say that. I can say kung fu, right? That's not a forbidden word to say.
No.
Okay.
You're good.
All right, good deal. John, what about you? Where can people find you on the interwebs?
All right. On Facebook, John Metych, Metych the third. Also have a page up for our comic stuff. Beta 3 Comics, BETA, the number 3 Comics. And you can find me elsewhere across the web under the name Cylon, CYLON 0011, old school Battlestar Galactica fan with matching license plates on my car.
And that's what you used to use in all the message boards, wasn't it?
Yep, still do. And my AOL address still is.
You had a little.
0011.
All right, Alex, where can people find you? You're gonna have to hold your Post-it note a little bit closer to your camera.
I'll say everything.
Okay.
My Instagram is Alex Gallimore 2. Just ALEXGALLIMORE 2. Twitter's just add 15 to the end. Alex Gallimore 25. And Facebook is just my name. So, and as for TikToks, well, no TikToks.
No TikToks. All right.
Won't do it. You gotta consolidate those, man. You gotta figure out something shorter. That's a bunch of different things. It's still confusing.
Yeah, it's just a link, right? I'll make all the links.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right, I am Roland Mann. You can find me on Facebook at Roland Mann. I have a little caricature there that you got to see a little gray in my beard. You can find me. Brent's trying to come back in. You can find me on Twitter at man Roland, and of course all over the Silverline stuff here, as are we all. So next week we're going to return to our craft, and we're going to talk to pencilers next week. And we're going to be asking them, how do they start a page? So we're going to get a handful of pencilers in here, and we're going to watch them start a page from scratch. They're not going to finish it, but we're going to see how
No,
they
you got to
start
make them do a whole page.
Yeah.
It's a race.
No, we're
You
trying
gotta
to
thumbnail it and
yeah,
everything.
We're trying not to stream too long, right?
Oh.
It's a marathon. We're going to go till a page is finished.
That's right.
Yep.
Start to finish.
2.5
All right.
hours in. I think that's a record for us.
Yeah.
You know, that's a great idea. We should stream on 24-hour comic day. And
That's
have
actually,
people penciling and inking and coloring and
Do a whole page. Yeah.
do like the whole thing. That would be freaking
No,
when is that?
Yeah, oh yeah, 24 hours. I'll make sure I have better internet connection.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You
Let
got
me
to
Google
start it
it.
with you got to come up with something brand new. So you got to you got to write it. So then you got to just a page. So I guess it's not going to be much, but you write one thing and do it all from the beginning to the end, letter it, everything.
You do electronic, right? So
you just
you
pass
can
it to
pencil
the
it
next
and then just
person.
pass it.
Yeah.
That's actually not a bad idea. Good idea, John.
Thank you. Thank
okay,
you.
so it's 11:30. We're out of here. See you next week. We're going to talk about craft. Going to talk to pencilers. Until then, make mine Silverline. Good night, everybody.
Bye
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Keep your hands clean. Don't touch your face. Ah!
Achoo!